All right, good evening. I'll call the meeting to order right at 7 o'clock. Be another beautiful summer day out there. So we have a very busy agenda, 17 items. And some of them require action, some don't. I'll try to keep us moving, but please interrupt, or if you need more information, feel free to speak up. So the first item are additions, deletions, and changes. Go ahead.
I had a question about, and maybe that's why Frank is here, the deal with the SRO.
He's here for the public comment.
But
so
we never
we'll
said that we were having that on the agenda.
well,
He's just coming for a public
yeah,
comment.
right.
At
So,
the beginning of the meeting.
so it's not on the agenda.
It was going to be in the town administrator report to report
Oh,
about it.
okay,
Yeah,
so, but,
yeah.
but if we were accepting public comment about it, then I would have thought it would have been listed as an
Right,
agenda item if
right.
the public was coming to
So I
us.
think we got some feedback from CVU, and
Oh, okay.
we'll go
All
right to the public
Okay.
comment.
Okay.
Frank, did you want
Shouldn't have been longer than 2 or 3
to?
hours.
Okay, perfect. That'll keep us on the agenda.
We got 20 minutes.
Yeah, emphasize the deletions. Yeah.
I'm Frank Haas, I'm the chief of police. And my public comment is, when we left the last meeting, when we were discussing the SRO, we were going to have public comment, we were going to do all of this. And the reason why it's not on the agenda, and this is kind of for closure for all those people that thought that this was going to be a subject, is the fact that the report we got essentially is we were $20,000 over what they can get for Shelburne or Shelburne
Somewhere
and
else.
or the sheriff's department. The thing is the amount that we gave them, yeah, it would have definitely paid for it. But when I gave the select board the $43 an hour, and then Caleb gave the $9.50 for a car, the town would not have lost any money providing an officer to CVU. We would have, however, for 25%, we would have paid for it. So yes, we would have had to pay. So I would still a proponent. It's out of our hands now, so it's nothing that can happen. So for 3 years, which is what I believe the contract's going to be, that's it. We're either going to have a Shelburne or a sheriff's department up in CVU. So anyway, I just wanted to make that statement that it's no longer an issue with the town.
So are you announcing that they have accepted it, or are you
No, I'm
announcing
just saying
that
that
they
we're
just
not in-
offered
we're not in
$20,000
contention of it.
less than what we offered?
Yeah, we're not in contention of it. So when they have their meeting tomorrow, I assume that they will be discussing both Shelburne and sheriff's, but we're not part of the discussion now.
Is the sheriff's proposal similar to what, do you know?
No, I don't.
Okay.
All we got was that it was approximately 20,000 less. So that's, and the sheriff's probably could, I would assume, could probably underbid Shelburne. Mm-hmm. But where Shelburne has the advantage of us is they may have enough cars to just go ahead and do it.
Right.
That car hurt us a little bit. But
Yeah.
like I said, I'm a little disappointed that we're not even part of the conversation.
Yes.
Because I think that we would have been the best service for CVU. So anyway.
Yeah, and I'm convinced of that too, and quite disappointed that we're not at least in the running. But, I think at the same time, it did feel like CVU would need to pay for the service that we provide. And without time to go back to the taxpayers, it would be hard to agree to take on more cost without, taxpayers agreeing to that.
I would be curious, though, that it seems like we showed a spreadsheet of how we were calculating that the information that the sheriff's department and what the school is looking for should be publicly available, I would
I
think.
am definitely interested
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
So.
And I've
we-
asked, they don't have it yet.
Okay.
They don't have it yet. They just
Okay.
have a,
But tomorrow at 8
understanding.
o'clock is their school board meeting, and that's when that
Okay.
DSRO is.
So did they contact you, Frank, and give you that information?
No, they went through
Yeah, I reached
town
out.
administrator.
Oh, okay.
just so we knew what was to be
Yeah.
talked about tonight.
So they didn't reach out to you to let you know, you asked them what the status was?
Because I was watching the meeting last week, and so I just sent her an email, just checking in, I saw what what she spoke about at the meeting after you guys had presented the proposal, but I just wanted to kind of get a clear indication of thoughts so that I could move forward into the public,
Yeah.
announcing the public forum for the next meeting. But
Right.
that's when she let me know the next day that, actually, we're a little further off than, we're about 20,000 off of what they would, got indications from the other places, and so they were gonna just continue with those conversations, and felt like,
So am I to infer that the perfect fit of us over any other department is outweighed by $20,000, basically? I'm not asking that of
The thing
anybody
I
in
would ask
particular,
is
but.
everybody in this room are taxpayers of that school district also. So selfishly, if I lived in Shelburne and all of a sudden saw that they were paying Hinesburg 20,000 more than they could have gotten a service, is that being responsible to the taxpayers? So that's the way I have to look at it as a civilian.
Yeah, there's a couple of ways to look at that, though, and there's more nuances than just that statement, but I get what you're saying, and I wonder if, I don't know exactly how it sounds like they haven't reached that decision yet. It's not going to happen until tomorrow.
The thing that I read on their agenda is they're giving it to somebody, like either a committee or the administration or something, to make it happen. I don't know if anything other than that one sentence agenda item.
my understanding is they were gonna make, based on their conversations with all the different towns and the different, and the sheriff's, they were gonna make a recommendation to which one they were gonna go with, and then they were gonna pursue the conversations with that town or after that meeting. So at that meeting tomorrow night, I suspect Jean will make a recommendation, or someone's gonna be making a recommendation to the board on pursuing the conversation with whichever town that is.
I would think we should try to stay informed, and that it would be important to work out what protocol they will be using.
Right. So, hopefully.
Yeah.
That at least, the chief or Caleb or somebody is involved a little bit once if they go ahead and make a contract and then work out, some of the issues.
Yeah, because I think
between the two towns.
there will be
Yeah.
some
There will be.
territorial
Yeah.
issues.
Yes,
Yeah.
there will be.
Okay.
So
So-
I think Caleb made the example, if there's a traffic accident in the parking lot, are they gonna call Hinesburg to come solve that problem? Or is that
Right. Yeah.
the SRO officer who steps in?
I think the SRO would get to know the students a lot better if
If
they
they
were out
did.
working their crash in the parking lot.
That's right, I would agree,
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, so I think
So
we.
we'll stay in touch, yeah. And it is unfortunate, the more I, understood how we would work within that structure, the more I thought it was a good thing for Hinesburg, all around, and the school. So,
Okay,
but thanks, Frank.
thank you. Y'all have a
Okay,
good night.
Thank you.
Make sure you look at the sunset as you walk.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful. So I'm assuming no other public comment. So we'll move right into item 3. Hinesburg, the HCRC is asking, Carla Munson's here, is looking at buying, getting the food
Accepting.
shelf building next to the library, and if that was to happen, asking the town as a 501c3
501c3 nonprofit organization.
about property taxes. Go
Right.
ahead.
Right. As I said in my email, Jan has graciously offered to donate the food shelf building to us for our use. So of course we accept it, and she'd like to close by year end. So we've been going through all the steps necessary to get to that point. We've already had an inspection done of the building, and she has agreed to repair a lot of things that she knew about that were going to happen. And we've had an EPA Phase 1 study done. We haven't gotten the results of that yet. I guess it's a good thing as you become the owner of a property to have one of these phase one environmental things done in case there are any issues, you would be liable for it somewhere down the road. But the fellow that did it didn't see any problems. So of course, with taking ownership of this building, we're going to be incurring a lot more expenses. And one of the items was the property tax. So I contacted the state and got the forms that are necessary, but you can't do anything until you actually own the building. And Joe Fallon's representing us in that transaction. So hopefully that will happen in around November, and then we can complete the forms that have to be submitted to the assessor or lister, whatever we have at this point. And they take into consideration all of the things that we serve, all the people in Hinesburg. It's open, to everyone. It's not just a specified target. I think you all know what services we provide. So for the emergency funds, the Friends of Family, the food shelf, the Hinesburg rides, and our medical lending program. So it does reach to all the residents. So hopefully it will be eligible for that. And it says in the forms that the assessor lister is the one that can make the decision whether it should be tax exempt or not. And I guess they consult.
that's the
Doesn't go to
process.
the BCA.
If it's denied, then the next step would be to appeal to the BCA.
Got it.
Yeah, and then if it's still denied, then you can go on up the steps to
Yeah.
the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what the forms say, that,
So it
Yeah,
doesn't
I did
actually
go
come to the
online and
select board
Yeah.
or at town meeting. So
yeah,
the
this
the
is what it
assessor,
says in
but
here.
yeah,
They can make the-
interesting.
But I'm sure they would go to the Department of Taxes for input, if necessary, information, and I'm sure the Select Board would have an input into it also. So that's,
If it's not statutorily, we don't have a say in it, then.
Well, we'll have to look at the process and make
I
sure
mean,
we.
I looked it over and
Yeah.
it doesn't say that.
doesn't
No,
say
it doesn't
that.
say that
Interesting.
at all. It says
Okay.
they have the responsibility to make the decision. But wouldn't you
Yeah.
think that a letter of
Under the
support?
guidelines that they
Well,
have.
it was interesting that, the town took over ownership of the Masonic Hall.
Right.
And I think one of the reasons was that because they couldn't afford to pay the taxes anymore, they had been exempt, and then the state made a change in saying that
Though they're not
they're
qualified
not
for exempt.
qualified for exemption, so the town took it over. And one of the reasons that maybe they weren't qualified was because they're not open
To
to
everybody,
everyone.
yeah,
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
That
So
makes
it's up
sense.
to them, but I
Yeah.
would think that a letter of support,
Oh,
if you
yeah.
felt
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah, I think
would,
as we get
be
closer, we could
appreciated,
certainly
yeah.
have a discussion about that.
Right.
And I did check the assessed value of the building currently is $219,200. So for this year's taxes, based on the tax rate, is $4,549.44.
Jan gave us a list
Yeah.
of what it was
there any
last year.
land, or is it just sort of the plot that it's on and that's it?
Pardon?
Is there land that goes with it, or
Oh,
is it
yeah,
just the?
there's 20,500 square feet. I went to the office
30
today
of an
and
acre.
received it. This is what the lot looks like. It's like a
60,000.
pie-shaped lot. So I said, I guess we can't subdivide it and put a house back there. So our, expenses are gonna go up because Jan had taken care of all the expenses for everything. The electricity, the water, sewer, the gas, everything she took. We paid our telephone. That was about it. And we also paid the last couple of years for snow plowing and sanding and shoveling. We split it with the library. So we figured that we were gonna need maybe about $1,500 more a month to put aside a month to
Yep.
cover all this.
But now you won't have to worry what could happen.
Exactly.
3 years down the
yes,
road.
Yes. For years, we've always
Yeah.
kidded with her when we are up for renewal of our lease.
Yeah.
You could donate it, or we could buy it from you for $1 or whatever. And then she contacted me. I think it was in like August, and said, "I'd like to do this."
So that's very generous
Yes,
of Jan
very,
Bloomstrand,
yes, yes.
and it has
Yes.
been very generous up
Yes,
to now. That's been
yes,
a
she's
great,
great,
site
right.
for the food shelf
It's
compared to
perfect.
the basement of the church.
United Church. Right.
Yeah.
It's perfect because it's private, and
Yeah.
people feel comfortable going there, and we have more space.
Will you? I mean, been in there, so there's not like a lot of extra space. Do you have your meetings there?
Yes, yes.
You do?
We've-
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to use that as our office also,
Yep.
and we're going to start having our monthly meetings
Yep.
there.
Okay.
Which we started this month.
So I
We've
think,
taken over a corner of it more
Yeah.
or less for that, because our coordinator needs to meet with people too for emergency funds,
okay,
you know,
yeah.
things.
So you
and-
need a little space.
Yeah, so it's a nice private space. So.
All right, so
Mm.
we can put this on the agenda at some point, you know, before
Yeah,
November.
after we have the closing, then I
Yes.
have to fill out
Yeah.
this wonderful form
Okay.
and all this, like, there's a lot of information that needs to be pulled together to put on this form to submit to the assessor. And then we'll go from there, so.
Have you got
plus,
everything you need, or do you need assistance with any of
No,
that?
no, it's all information that we have to get from our articles of incorporation, our bylaws, and some information on the building, et cetera, et cetera.
But all self-sufficient there?
Yep, we can
Okay.
pull it all together, yep.
All right, well,
So we're
thanks.
just basically asking for the support, and then with our agency request funds that come into, we'll maybe up that a little bit to get some more money for expenses.
Well, thanks for doing all this. And
Oh, you're
it's
welcome.
a great organization. It definitely supports Hinesburg and surrounding communities, primarily
Right,
Hinesburg.
right.
And I think Hinesburg will support those efforts.
Good.
All right, thank you.
May I have my, yeah, that back?
Yeah,
Right, thanks a lot.
thank you.
Thanks, Carla.
So next on the agenda, there's two items concerning wastewater treatment. One is application for a clean water revolving fund associated with the design work, looking at our wastewater treatment plant and how we might possibly meet the new permit requirements. And next one is a contract agreement with Aldrich and Elliot, who have been the engineers for our system for how long now?
Oh, boy.
A long
Not
time.
a little while. Few years.
So those are the two items, I think. Both of those will require action.
Signatures.
Yeah. Do you wanna, Wayne, do you wanna?
Sure. Do you guys, either you guys want to go through the application, or you?
Do you,
Not
well,
really, Joe? No.
when we've got the full application in front of us.
Yeah,
and
there's a lot to it.
Yeah, well, this one here.
Oh,
So-
that's
yeah,
that's for the
yep, that's right.
revolving fund,
Yep,
yeah.
yep.
Maybe a very brief,
Absolutely, yep.
with that.
So this is really the first step in the process. This is the request for the planning funds for the study here. And this application applies to both water and sewer, and it's intended to include all the town information, financial information that the bond bank's looking for. So we typically put together what we can, and I had kicked it over to Renee and Joy, and they had to kind of run with it and work on all the internal financial information. So the first page, pretty straightforward, the applicant information, you got the town's tax ID, DUNS number. At the bottom of that, Renee is the designated contact person, the authorized representative for the town. That just means any correspondence that the state needs, they're gonna work with Renee directly. Joy is the alternate rep, and that just means you've got a second person available if they need, or they need to reach somebody else. We're listed next. The bottom of page 2, so this is the loan request amount. The total amount requested for this loan is $62,400. Everything in here qualifies for that 50% loan subsidy, so up to $31,200. Will be in subsidy to the town, so you won't have to pay that back. We did include $2,500 in here, put an allowance for legal fees, because when you get to the bond vote, you'll have bond paperwork and documents. That's eligible for the 50% loan subsidy
Oh,
also.
so that's
Yep.
why it's in there.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
right. So as you go on, we'll put permitting fees and different things like that in here. The objective is really so the town isn't incurring any kind of direct cost here, that all this work to get you to the bond vote is really captured within this planning loan request. The rest of that is pretty mainly just specific town information, and this is just for the water system. At this stage here, we really don't have some of the information developed. We're really in the early stages, so we don't have total project costs. We don't have we'll be working on an updated schedule. You don't know what the projected, O&M costs, all that stuff is. So some of this.
Because we have yet to really
That's
pick
correct.
a design.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yep. So this. Yep.
But there's something in here about water, right? And so you're just saying not applicable because it's not water, but I saw somewhere where there was a sheet on estimated costs for hooking up the new well to.
That's an item
Okay,
later on.
all right.
Yeah. This
Yeah, when we talk
application-
about that
Just the
well.
main
This
water.
application's
Yeah, okay,
a little bit confusing, Andrea, because it's for both sewer and water.
Yeah,
And when
so that's why you said
yeah.
NA.
Yeah,
because it's just wastewater.
when you check the box, I wish some of that stuff would just disappear, but it doesn't. It's still
Yeah,
there.
okay.
So the rest of this is really just getting the information on the town's current debt. And again, this application is just specific to the sewer. And then the rest of the questions are about, any borrowing, future borrowing. Page 5 is, anything on reserve funds. And then kind of continuing on really who the primary person is for various kind of town functions, everything from, managing the checkbook, again, the specific financial information. Again, this was prepared primarily by Renee and Joy. And then you get to the very back side of it here, and it does require, approval by a majority of the board. So the
Yes.
signatures are required on page 12. And then also below that by the clerk, and then the authorized representative, which will be Renee. And then once, for your consideration, if you're okay with the application and choose to submit it, we'll help with Renee and Joy getting this. And there's some, need to send the some town budget information over the past 2 or 3 years goes in with this. And this is going to take, 2 to 3 months here to
Okay.
get formally approved. It just, by the time they process it and get the paperwork back to the town, and, it just takes a little time to get this through the bond bank too.
Okay. So, and it's not so much we're competing with everybody else to get this money.
No.
It's just you got to get through the hoops.
That's right. That's
and,
correct. That's right. Yep.
qualify.
Yep. Exactly.
Whatever.
Yep.
And at this
Yep.
point, it's really a matter of, as long as we do everything correct.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The money should be there.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
state money.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. That's a good point. So you're really not competing for these funds. This money sit here. You can get this anytime. What we typically do, we prefer not to wait the 2 or 3 months to start the work. And, I've never had one of these rejected in all my years. So there really isn't any degree of risk, but it's not competitive. So the town's not really at risk here of not getting the funds. Yep.
Okay. Are there any questions about that? I think we did one of those not too long ago, because I think
Probably
since
did one
I've been
on
a
the-
select board member, I think for the water.
You probably did one on
Yeah,
the water. Yep.
I
So this
remember
would have
doing
been
it.
really similar, very
Yeah.
similar application, except that it would have been for the water. Yep.
So unless anybody has any questions, we could have a motion to approve this loan application, and then we would need to sign it tonight, huh?
Right.
Ideally.
So moved.
Okay?
I'll second it. It seems, well, go ahead.
Yeah, good.
Second.
All right. Any more discussion? Did you-
It seems like this is pretty routine. I mean,
Yes, absolutely.
everything that
Yeah,
I read
absolutely.
through,
Yeah.
and then everything you just said
Yeah,
is in
absolutely.
my mind.
Yeah.
Yep, you got to do that. That makes
Yep,
sense. Yep, gotta
that's
do
right.
that. So where's the hook on any of this, on this kind of stuff? I know there's time that needs to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
Because it just takes time to put it together. Where do we, it's not guaranteed money, but it's non-competitive money. You
That's
describe
correct.
it as.
Yeah.
And so where do we have to watch ourselves so we don't get?
For this, I honestly can't think of anything you got to be
Okay.
concerned about. I said I've never had one of these rejected in all my years. I mean, this is kind of a unique program. The money's there. It's available anytime. You don't have to submit by a certain date. I can't even think of anything off the top of my head that would really put you guys at risk, Aaron. So, yeah.
Fair
enough.
Yeah,
And
and
the
the
amount.
other
Go ahead.
thing we do too, which we don't worry about, is once you're starting to work. I mean, if our invoices are out 60 or 90 days, that's fine. I'm not anything that we're too concerned about at that point. This program's really set up because, many communities don't have that amount of money parked in their water or sewer budget to really go forward with this type of work. So as you're incurring our expense and your attorney or whatever else, it's set up so you can get reimbursed as you incur those expenses up to that amount. Yep. Yep.
And the amount is based on what the contract would be to do
Up
that,
to
up
that's
that
right.
work.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Okay.
And plus an allowance for legal. Yep.
Yeah, plus a few extra.
Yep. That's right. Yep.
items. All right. So we have the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, so the motion passed through item 4. Now on to item 5, which is the actual contract
Yep.
for this work. It's quite a detailed contract. It looks like it's a standard engineering
That's correct, yep.
contract. And there's a few items in there that have been NA'd, I think. And have we used these contracts before with your firm?
You probably haven't.
Okay.
We've used these for probably 3 or 4 years on the USDA funded projects. This has been the standard document. The reason for it, it's a nationally recognized standardized form. The state requires this as of July 1st that this be used. The primary reason they're into that is that everybody's working off the same document, so they don't have to send it to their legal and review the terms and conditions and all that other kind of stuff every time.
Every term and every condition is in this document.
That's right, yeah, and we're not even allowed to, other than putting something in there that it could be, this is there for a future phase. So this actually would get you through the whole project. What would happen, the next phase, you'd do an amendment to that, and the next phase you would do an amendment. So this has got everything in here really from start to finish. My issue is it's a lot, it's 80 pages, there's a lot
Yeah.
of detail here, and it's not easy reading. So especially I'm sitting here at some of these smaller communities and they just look at their, look at that document with their eyes glazed over. So there's just a lot there. So what we try to do,
Glad you said that, because as I'm reading through it, I mean, it makes sense, but
Yeah.
I
There's just a lot
sometimes
of
don't know what
detail.
I'm reading.
yeah.
If you look at his select board memo.
I
Yeah,
did look
I
at
did.
it, yeah. That
Summarizes
was
what
helpful.
the-
Yeah.
But I still thought I ought to give it a try to get through these pages, and
So what we
took a
do,
couple of
once we put a draft, so that goes into the state, it goes into facilities engineering. They review the document, they review the scope of services, they review the fee and all that to make sure it's appropriate for the work. They did
Who's
have
they? The state?
facilities engineering, yep,
Yes,
which are the
right.
funding
Yeah,
source.
I noticed
Yep,
that.
that's
So they
right.
kind of are our eyes and ears in a
Absolutely,
way.
that's right.
So.
Yep, that's right. And then we met about a week ago. We went through this with Renee, Joy, and Eric here too. What I try to do here, just to simplify this for you guys a little bit, because there's really only 2 sections in that whole document, that are really kind of important here. The first one is the summary of the fees, and the other part of that is the scope of services. So, just really kind of did this summary memo here. It does require signatures in 2 spots. I gave Renee a couple paper copies there, so
Yeah.
if you're okay with that tonight. One of them is set up for you to sign, Phil, as a select board chair. So the pages that are parts that are really important here is if you want to go back onto this DEC certification page, this has the summary of fees. So the preliminary engineering report, we're looking at $57,000. We've got $2,900 in here for bond vote assistance, so that's how we're getting to the $59,900, and that's consistent with what's in here in the application. The other part of this is important is the scope of services here,
Yep.
which is really customized, specific to the project here. That is in Exhibit J here, and just starting on page 1, just a little bit of a history of where you guys are at and what some of the needs are here, and then we get into the scope of services here. For the study here, we get the kickoff, document existing conditions. A lot of this we've got in-house, and we're working on getting your monthly operations reports. We got some of those today, so yep.
Did you see all 3?
Yes, I did. Yep. So that's the start of it. We're going to be doing some site visits out there to just get through the main pump station and treatment plant, just to document existing conditions and needs. B is important here because this is where we're going through your existing discharge permit. And this is where we were going to really work closely with you guys to come up with, what you need for additional flow. We've got
Beyond the 250.
Exactly. Yep. Alex has provided some information there. So
Yeah.
that's going to be a really important discussion to see where you guys are at currently, what you have left, and some of the other proposed projects
we
that are
think
out.
we might try to get
exactly.
to.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. I guess I have a question about how that process is going to
Yeah.
happen and when there's decisions that have to be made
Yep.
and how much information we're going to have, because it seems like there was only 3 reports that you were giving to us in this.
I would envision this, Andrea, like this would be kind of a separate discussion. The state requires that we have a typical 30, 60, 90%.
Okay.
But on item B, I would envision, we'll work together with the staff and Alex and kind of put things together. That's really, I don't know, that's your preference, if you would rather do a workshop during the day or whether that's a discussion at a select board meeting. I guess that's
Well,
kind
it
of up to you
seems
guys.
like there's definitely going to be some policy decisions that
absolutely.
we,
Yep,
that
absolutely.
we need
Yep.
to
Yep.
understand.
With
the-
your assistance
That's
on,
right, yeah,
what
yeah.
are those
Yeah.
decisions,
Okay.
what's the
I
impact
just
of
don't,
them?
Andrew, if whether you guys want to discuss that, it kind of a smaller group initially, and then that goes to the select board.
I
That's
would
up to you
think that
guys
would
how
be
you
the
want
most
to.
efficient, but,
Yeah, but exactly, yeah, that's a really
Yeah.
important decision at this stage, so, because that's really, going to be the basis for evaluating all the alternatives going forward, and last thing you really want to do is overbuild, and when you're looking at, new flow, as you know, what they're being approved for isn't actually what they're
What we're
discharging,
actually
what you're
having,
actually going
right.
to see too, so.
Right.
It's going to be important to have those discussions as you move forward. Under C, on the alternatives development analyses, we're kind of going through the description, design criteria. That's where the flows come in. Advantages, disadvantages, environmental impacts, land requirements, and this is all kind of really what the state's looking for. Constructability. And then what's also important is they want us to come up with O&M cost and cost and effectiveness here,
Yeah.
so you guys can make informed decisions as we move forward. The economic comparison is important. And then what we've done, which is a little different, we've laid this out into individual components. So we need to look at upgrades to the
Headworks.
main pump station, different types of headworks, depending what type of treatment process, that can dictate different types of headwork structures. We've got the biological and tertiary, and I can
Yeah.
assure you this isn't the complete list. There's other screenings. We do fully intend to look very hard at modifications to that existing lagoon and see what we can do there and what we can get to there. I know you've expressed some interest about looking at membrane MBRs. That's
Yeah.
a technology that's been out there for the last 8 to 10 years. We're actually looking at it on a water project. So if there's anything else, let us know. But we want to make sure we get anything in here that's appropriate. And
I mean, you think you'd want to have a wide scope and then
Yeah.
you sort of bring it in.
yep,
See,
excellent. Yep,
yeah.
yep, that's right. Yep.
The other thing is part of this also going to be understanding the impact of the condition of the existing mains and what contribution we have infiltration, and, if we were addressing that, how does that affect our capacity? And,
We definitely will go through all your flow records, Andrea, and everything at the treatment plant. We don't have anything specifically in here to go out into the collection system right now to look at.
right, but
You
I
know.
think from
Seems like
everything that
there's-
I've been reading
Yeah.
about from all the other systems
Yeah.
was that people have found incredible savings in terms of fixing their existing systems.
Yeah.
And the other thing is whether we're going to be looking at what we might be needing to do in terms of pre-treatment for the different businesses that we have with the brewery and Kimball Brook, and I mean that whether that's going to.
Okay.
If those options may. I mean,
Sure.
Yeah, that what we need to be considering for the
Sure.
specialized
Yep.
effluent that is produced in Hinesburg.
And that's a good discussion too. Again, that really becomes a policy decision in some cases too, because, different communities handle that and some places don't require anything, some
Yeah.
places do.
I think
so.
some Vermont communities are.
Oh,
though,
yeah.
Like
Yeah, oh, yeah.
we're not
Yeah.
picking on
Yeah,
the breweries,
yeah.
but the breweries may have to do something right up front or
Yeah.
just their best practices to
Yeah.
minimize the loading.
So the collection system on the wet weather flows
Yeah.
and the some of the smaller, like the food processing, you don't have any breweries here,
Yeah,
do
we
you?
do.
Yeah,
We
we
have
have two.
two. We
You
have two breweries, and we
Okay,
have Smoke
okay.
and Cure, so there's
Okay, yeah.
Grease,
Yeah.
and there's
Yep, okay.
Kimball Brook is the dairy.
Yeah.
So we have high,
Yeah,
unusual type of,
that's part of what
Waste.
we'll do when we go through your operations reports.
Okay.
If we'll just see if there's anything that jumps out in there, whether it's your BOD or your TSS or, the nutrient stuff, to see if there's anything in there that looks out of line with what we'd see for kind of a typical municipal facility. Okay. And then we got solids handling. You know, we fully intend to do some facility visits. So kind of when we get narrowed in on
Yeah,
some
I
of the
saw that
alternatives, that's
written
really
up, so
important.
that would be
Yep,
interesting to do, yep.
And I think a lot of that, you know, it's interesting. I look back like 8 or 10 or 12 years ago, some of those trips were pretty lengthy. You know, you had to go down to southern Connecticut or Massachusetts, but I would envision most of what we're looking at is relatively close by. It's really important to just talk to other towns,
Yeah.
the operators, you know, understand what they like, what they don't like. And, you know, so kind of moving forward, you can feel comfortable with the approach from an operations and efficiency standpoint. So buildings and site, you know, depending what we need there, you know, we're going to have a discussion of whether it makes sense to do something more permanent down there, and maybe the guys don't work out of the main pump station anymore because, you know, the new facilities have a, you know, a plant PLC SCADA system and telemetry. It's really computer driven, and
Yep.
that
You
may
don't
not
need to
make
be there.
sense. Yeah, it may not make sense to have that here, so we'll have to have some more discussion about that. Yep.
And in terms of actually the lagoons themselves, I mean, would there be any consideration if we wanted to move the whole system someplace else? Or we needed additional land or are we making that a given that
Yeah.
it's happening there and we're not even exploring?
Well, I think we wouldn't want it to be a given if we spread wide to start with and
Yeah,
say,
okay.
you know, and then,
All right.
That's a tough one because the state is not very receptive. You have that existing discharge point in the La Platte right now, and basically what comes with that is they give you a 200-foot mixing zone downstream, and then you have the waste management zone. There's probably a little flexibility to move that a little bit either way, but to go to some really completely different spot, they're incredibly inflexible about that. It's really tough to do.
Because that
because
was
of where
one
the water
suggestion
comes-
is that we can move our discharge
yeah,
point.
downstream farther.
Yeah.
Okay.
From the state?
Yeah.
From one of the engineers that we were interviewing
Oh.
was.
what advantage would that have?
That
More
we would,
flow?
well, that you because you would be increasing the square
Yeah.
area that is the watershed that's feeding it, because
'cause
just
you've
below
captured
it,
a few
we'd
more
be
tributaries.
We'd be capturing Patrick Brook, we'd be
Yeah.
capturing Carson's Beaver Pond, so
Yeah.
we actually, where our discharge point is a very small
Yeah.
area of the
Yeah,
entire
very small.
watershed
Okay.
that comes down in there, so.
And that's where a lot of the measurements are done, is just below that?
Yes, yeah.
So it
So
doesn't,
it's
so
a
really,
big
you're
deal.
just getting.
Yeah.
And the confluence of Patrick Brook, which is all of Lake
Lot of-
Iroquois, is
yeah,
a
the
huge
big
percentage
flow.
of the
Yeah.
watershed,
Okay.
so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we can
okay.
definitely,
And be at the correct T and at the correct level of phosphorus if we just move downstream a
Well,
little bit. It
probably
would
not.
certainly, but it would
Yeah,
certainly be
but
diluted.
it might be easier
the
to.
phosphorus wouldn't
yeah.
change, but maybe
Yeah.
the ammonia could be.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
We'll talk to the state about that. I did not have a good experience here in a recent. We just did that with Williamstown. Kind of the same thing. They had it's a lagoon, they had a new ammonia limit. So before the project started about 3 years ago, we worked with the state and they said, well, if you move this down, it's going to be easier. It's a larger receiving water. So they did it. It wasn't a long ways. It was, 500 to 800 feet of pipe, but it was a cost. So the new permit got rolled out, and it never didn't change. They went back on what they initially offered. So, but
Okay.
yeah, Andrew, that's a good discussion. There's no
Okay.
harm in asking them.
Yeah.
Said if we move this 1,000 feet downstream, is that maybe that gets you out of the ammonia, won't the phosphorus, but maybe there's some benefit to doing that
Okay.
from a process standpoint. Yeah,
Yeah.
because it is done.
All right.
How far? Just.
Well, I mean, I think they didn't specify, but they understood that this portion of the La Platte is
Very low.
really small.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
So
they basically,
just-
they go in the summer, they call it the 7Q10, and
Yeah.
right now there's
Yeah.
just no flow there. So
Right.
the farther downstream you can get that, just the more water's in that receiving stream. So, and the more water is, obviously the limit doesn't need to be that low to kind of comply with the water quality standards. So it is done. Yep. Yep. So that's something we can definitely check in and ask about.
Okay.
The proposed projects. So, we've gone through the alternatives, updated site plans, process schematics, hydraulic profile, project phasing, preliminary design, funding sources is very important. I've actually talked to USDA already, so they kind of have you guys on their radar. They're going to be Misty Cinsigale, she works out of the St. Johnsbury office, but she'll be checking in with you at some point, Renee, just to let them know you're here and, you know, kind of talk through the program a little bit.
But there are two options.
Yes,
That's-
yep.
There's the
And it could-
SRF and
Yep.
USDA.
It could be joint funded too.
Oh, okay.
Yep,
Yeah.
that is possible too. So USDA, you'll get a grant loan, but it's still possible to tap into the state grant in combination of that. And then looking at obviously the O&M cost and sewer rates and all that based on the
Yeah.
funding option, that's going to be important to understand what it's going to cost everybody. And it's not just the debt retirement, it's the, you know, the additional operating cost.
On that, wouldn't we want to be looking at that as we're selecting alternatives also?
Yes, yeah,
Okay. Yeah,
absolutely.
part of
Because you
that.
could find, you
Yeah.
could find that something has a lower capital cost, but it's significantly,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
okay.
And the other thing we got to be really careful in your case too is, you know, some people use this term right sizing, but again, it's back to overbuilding. You know, this is why this discussion at the front becomes very important because let's say you build a facility for 350,000 and you're operating a 200,000 gallon per day facility over the next 8 to 10 years. That's not very cost effective.
Right.
So that also gets to be very, very important. It's just not very efficient at that
Yeah.
stage. So you have to build it for that 20-year projection, but you know, you're not going to see that additional flow for a period of time. So
But we don't want to get to that 80% because
Yeah,
then we'll
that's
be
true.
Right,
That's
we'll
right.
do
Yeah,
it
Rolled
again.
that's
right back
That's
here.
right.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's right. Yep. And then, you know, we've the report that's just got to follow the state template. They require a minimum of 3 meetings. I fully intend there's going to be, you know, multiple progress meetings. We're close by here. There's going to be multiple discussion points and decision points with the select board as we go through. And then we've got the last piece of that is the bond vote assistance. So.
Okay.
So that's the thing I don't understand is that we're agreeing on a set amount of money
Yeah.
for this, but, you know, what happens if we want like twice as many meetings as, you know, that's where I'm a little nervous about the scope of services is kind of, you know, we don't know what we can ask for, which
Yeah.
might end up being an extra.
Well, and I mean, I guess I'll probably back up a little bit in how we work. We're close by. I mean, it's one thing, like I just did a project in Bennington, so yeah, I don't want to care, but every time I go to a meeting, there's 7 or 8 hours of time.
Yeah.
We're not going to worry about that, Andrea, as we go
Okay.
through. I mean, if we do extra meetings, that's fine. We're close by, you know, we're nearby. I mean, I live in Essex. You know, we're located in Essex, and again, it's a one thing if it's a 6-hour, 7-hour task. I mean, if we get to the point partway into this whole thing and we've done 3 or 4, not a big deal. If we've done 10 or 12, you know, maybe we'll talk about it at that point. But we're not, and I have no issue with even looking at these other things that we've been discussed. Those are just kind of part of what we can look at as part of the process. And, you know, I fully expect what we have here is complete, comprehensive, and don't intend to come back unless the meetings get really crazy out of control. But we're close by, and it's important to more have those discussions as we go through to make sure everybody's kind of part of the process and part of the decision making here as we go
So I
through.
think what would help that process is if, you know, I envision us to have a small committee,
Yeah.
you know, including Eric, obviously, and any of his other guys, and either Renee or Joy, maybe a couple select board members to really
Absolutely, yeah.
be focused on
Yeah.
this
And
over
our
the
planning-
next.
And planning commission.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
and so that, you know, as we move forward, what are the decision points we're looking at, and what are some of the, to help, you know, get us into the right direction, and then obviously keep the select board, you know, informed of everything that's happening, rather than, you know, try to do it in this form.
Right,
It just
okay.
isn't going to work.
And then they can make the decision on when it needs to go to the select board
Right.
from a kind of a decision,
Yep.
discussion, policy point, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think at key decision points, and as we start to look at, you know, key decisions, cost of one versus the other, benefits versus, you know, so that everybody's kept informed, I think.
Yeah, and
So I have another question. So the revolving loan fund was for $67,000 or something? And this is for 59. So does that 67?
There's some legal fees.
Oh, the-
62.4, yeah, we carried.
62 and 59. Oh, that's close.
Yeah, we carried,
Okay.
yeah, we
Got
carried
it.
2,500.
Okay.
It's just a
Yeah,
placeholder for
yeah.
legal, Andrea.
Okay.
And I have no problem if like the things you've asked for and all that stuff, if well, those are obviously in the meeting minutes, so that's perfectly fine too, to make sure we
Yeah.
hit those, yeah.
And if I'm expecting that you as a professional will help us be asking the questions that we don't know enough to
Sure,
ask.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Okay.
Any questions for Wayne? Any other questions?
One other thing I really wanted to
Oh,
touch
you
on
got
is
your Gantt
this
chart
is the
there?
schedule,
Yeah.
yep. Very briefly, just to kind of give you, the stuff the last probably 2.5, 3 years didn't change, but one of the discussions when we met last week I was getting concerned about is March 2019 is coming pretty quickly for consideration of
That's
a bond vote.
against the permit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but the key thing here is that February 28th date for the submittal of the plan of the state, that's really the key milestone, that we all need to work through and make sure we hit at this point. The challenge with a bond vote is that if you're trying to do an early March bond vote is, the select board really has to be making a decision on a proposed project in December. And then you're coming back out in the middle of January for the bond vote documents and, agreeing on numbers and signing all that stuff because it's got to get out, to the public. There just isn't enough time. There's a lot to go through here and a lot of discussion. So it became very clear that trying to get ready for a March 2019 bond vote really wasn't workable. So, and it's important in something like this to take the more time and, work through all that stuff than it is to rush it through to the voters. So for right now, I just put May as a placeholder for bond vote. That's something you guys will have to think on and have some more discussion. I just, whether it's something you want to do, next spring or, at another time, that's something we'll have some more discussion. And just really, the point here is, we're all up and on board here for hitting that February 28th date with the state, with the submittal of the plan.
And that means that we would have gone through alternatives and
Yes,
cost and
yes,
everything
yeah,
by
that's right.
February, which
Yeah.
is, we're just starting budget season now.
Yeah.
And so is there any leeway with them in the fact that this is in court anyway?
Right,
the
I was gonna
permit?
ask that.
Like, so can we push that out a little bit? Or,
Probably not at this point, but it's something that we probably want to have a little more discussion with them on.
I mean,
yeah.
because
Yeah.
conceivably,
Yeah.
I mean, we
We're-
don't know what the decision will be.
Yeah.
We
I
might
know.
guess, but we
That's-
don't know what the decision will be, and it could impact us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it probably will. I mean,
Yep.
it'll probably be sticky for a while.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That's a great point. I mean, that just creates a little bit of uncertainty
Yeah.
through this whole process, and everybody's going to wait to see at this point.
And we can show that we're working towards it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just feeling like I don't want to, I would like to know that we can be as thorough and not be pushing ourselves because the state has said that.
The big thing I just wanted to kind of stress, because I know we had been under the thought of trying to do a bond vote in March, and it really just became evident that
Yeah.
wasn't going to happen. So this is
Yeah.
the kind of the big message I wanted to
Yeah.
kind of get with
Yeah.
the revised schedule.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, the action here would be a decision on this contract for this item 5. And this is the document here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's 2 copies there.
Yeah. Oh, that's why it's
Yep.
twice as thick. Okay. Any more discussion on the contract itself? Thanks for that overview. It was very helpful.
Looking at the schedule, the hard, fast dates, are those always the dates that are interactions with state?
That's correct. Yep. Yeah.
And
Yep.
that's it for hard, fast?
Yes. Yep. So the February 28th date at this point, then the progress report due on November 30th, and yep. Then the next one is August 31st, 2020. Yep.
How many towns are under this same timeline?
It depends. That's not an easy answer to this. The lower phosphorus limit affects each of these facilities a little bit differently. Hinesburg is the only one that is dealing with, a lower ammonia limit, a lower phosphorus limit. I would say that every community's kind of dealt with this a little bit differently, probably in each case. Some are okay. Some, just have the capacity to the type of plant we're trying to hit. That new limit isn't going to be a problem.
Right, they've already got the
that's right.
design
Yep.
around it.
Some communities may not hit that in 5 or 8 or 10 years, and so everybody's kind of on a different timetable on what they can do and what they can't do. It's just a tough one for Hinesburg because, as we've talked about, it's one of those isn't a big deal, but those in combination and the fact you want more treatment capacity, more flow capacity, all just kind of hit at the same time. So you guys are really the only ones in this specific situation. Everybody else is kind of the way this is laying out is everybody has to do this phosphorus optimization plan, and that's really the thing over the next year or so. Where they're at, can they hit the limit? If they can, they're okay. If they're not, then other facilities are going to have to go into this kind of mode or timetable as we move forward. But that's where the lawsuit that Phil mentioned is kind of put some uncertainty in there because we still don't. Some places just had to move ahead, because of age-related and other things. But it just places a little bit of uncertainty, on what the limit may be moving forward, especially if the state isn't successful in the lawsuit.
Okay.
Oh, and, well, I guess in terms of the economic analysis,
Yep.
we didn't really talk about that. We talked about operations and maintenance,
Yeah.
but really one of the primary concerns is how we're going to afford this
Yep.
and who's going to pay for it.
Sure, yeah.
So that's,
Yep.
and
I
whether
mean, that was
you would
in
be
there,
doing that
the-
in-house or be
Yep.
hiring
Yep.
consultants, economic consultants to help
We
do
would
that,
we would
or-
actually help you. You're talking about more like the allocation fees and how to, yeah.
Well, not necessarily allocation fees. I'm talking about, developing a system that that figures that exists, what's the proportion of it that existing users are needing
Yep.
to be paying for, but any expansion shouldn't be on the backs of existing users. And so we really have to
I've been through that
figure that out.
several times
Okay.
with, like the, Essex Town Junction and those, yeah. So I've been through the allocation fee, hook on fee. So that's a discussion absolutely as we go through. I mean, the first part is trying to figure out the funding options and then figure out how the town feels like you want to pay for that. Yep. Yep. Or how you can pay for that. Is it on the sewer rates? Is it on the tax base? Is
Is it on future users?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay.
Yep, that's right. Yep, that's right. Yep. So you're right. There is a cost associated with just maybe the upgrade of the existing facility and all that, but any of the new capacity really should be borne by the, the future, the new developments. Yep. So that's.
So that's where I feel like it really comes into
Yep.
what is the capacity that we're going for and really looking at where that sweet spot is.
Sure. Yep.
Of
Right.
Yep.
And my understanding is that the assimilative capacity of the La Platte, by moving the discharge point further downstream and it becoming a larger watershed, would that have an effect on the capacity of the plant? I mean, you're still going to have to meet the point
that's-
two, but
Yep.
we would be discharging to a larger.
I'm not sure I know the answer to that because
Okay.
what would happen is if you did that, so they would create this new 200-foot mixing zone like what
Okay.
you have at the existing outfall,
Yeah.
and then you have a 1 mile default. And I forget right now, I think your waste management zone is over a mile because again, the La Platte is such a small receiving
Yes.
water. So it's hard to say. It could be shorter, but it would be moved downstream. So maybe the mile's okay, but that's something the guys
Okay.
and the water quality would have to, they do the modeling and all that, Andrea. So that's
Okay.
something that they would have to tell us. And then you got to look at the cost benefit of, I don't know, 1,000 or 2,000 feet of pipe and pumping and, does that get you out of some of the permit limits? So that's something we'll have to have some more discussion on. Yep. Yep.
All right. So maybe a motion to accept the contract agreement with Aldrich and Elliot for the wastewater plant upgrade as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Any more discussion?
So we have funds coming from the application that we just talked about for paying
Yep.
for this. But that's not 100%.
No. So
50%.
50%.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the remainder would come out of our capital fund that we have
Yep.
and that.
So we're talking in round numbers, $60,000 for this what the motion on the table is for.
Do you have a question if somehow the town would have to pay that if you did at some point, Aaron? Is that your
That's
concern?
one of the directions I'm
Yeah.
going, is just making sure that, what if we are on the hook for 60,000, they don't,
So worst case scenario, that let's just say this project just completely died, never went anywhere. So the first thing you would do is you would qualify for the 50% loan subsidy. So let's say there's 31,000 or whatever roughly remaining. What the state would do is require, and that's obviously a couple years out, so you'd have budgeting time, is you would have to repay for that over 5 years at 0% interest. So that's really kind of the repayment schedule would happen if this whole project didn't go to the next phase, if the bond vote, it just completely died here. And so,
yeah, because that's, I guess, a scenario, if
Yeah.
the bond vote, no matter
Yeah.
how many times we try, says
Yeah.
it comes up no every
Yeah.
time.
yeah, what happens, I've been through this a few times. Ultimately, the states, with a compliance schedule, though you can only have two, obviously, in a calendar or 12-month period, but the state's going to keep pushing you at some point to, make sure that you're in compliance with the new permit limit. So, but worst case, if it didn't happen and everything died, that's really what would be the town's responsibility moving forward.
And then paying fines.
Well, the enterprise fund.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It'd be the enterprise fund.
Yeah,
too,
well, the other
so-
thing that I've seen them do too is, the fines will be the amount of what it would cost the customers to build the improvements too. So,
Interesting.
that's
and-
hopefully, let's not worry.
Yeah.
That's a long ways
No,
from
I
that, so-
understand that, but
I know.
like, maybe now is the time to
Yeah.
say it out loud
Yeah.
at least once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions? We have the motions on the table, right? All those in favor of approving the contract, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, so that motion passed. And we'll need to sign those. Are you gonna take, you're not gonna take it with you?
I
no,
don't
we'll-
have to,
we'll do
that's
it.
fine. You could
Just
just
put it
do
in our
at your
pile
leisure.
to
Yeah,
sign, yeah.
yeah. I'll take one of the papers and just scan it, and we'll forward that on to the state for their records whenever you guys are all,
Okay.
yeah, when you find, so, yeah.
So I brought up the fact that maybe we put together a small committee to work with Aldrich and Elliot as the eyes and ears of the select board and the town and the users. So we should either,
It's an Eric or an Eric John.
Eric,
Joy and I, or
yeah.
two select board members? or is
Well,
there-
it's something I'm willing to do. That's sort of why I'm okay with that. And if someone else was
Yeah,
interested,
And a planning commission member? Is that what you
could.
said, or is that?
Well, we mentioned somebody from the planning
Yeah,
group. Yeah,
either staff or a
Right.
member, maybe a community member at large,
yeah.
just so people.
If somebody, yeah, there may be somebody with some experience.
Get a local business owner or
Yeah.
somebody that may have some interest, yeah.
So 6 or 7, I imagine it'll be busy for a while. We won't all be able to be there on that particular date, so maybe by next meeting we can bring that up one more time and start the process.
Yep.
And if any other select board members interested, they could, let Renee know or Joy.
So as an agenda.
And
item?
and Alex can maybe either consider it or suggest someone who might be good.
Certainly mention it to the planning commission. I
Yeah.
think it's very important that they
Yeah.
know that
Yeah.
what we're up to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I would
on
go
the
so
agenda,
far
I
as
didn't
to
see it.
appoint Joe Iadanza or
Do you
his
need to be part of the
designate,
conversation?
you know,
I
and
don't
just
know. I'm not sure. No.
kind of make sure that it happened when we go to appoint this committee,
Yeah.
you know.
Okay, I think that's it.
All right.
Right.
The only other thing later on the agenda, we do have the well conversation as far as
Yes.
the next steps. I don't know if you want Wayne to be here for that part, if we want to move that up in the conversation, or if there's any questions you have while he's still here.
So
I don't want
we
to make
have
him wait for the whole.
next items, the municipal grant, which we were
Right.
saying, let's hold off on that. And are you saying, so this is
Item 9?
discussion concerning the BlackRock well?
Steps for the well. I'm just, while Wayne's here, if you guys had any questions for him directly.
Yeah,
I didn't want to jump in. I know
it's,
Renee and Eric asked me to just throw a rough budget.
oh,
cost
I
together.
I saw that,
That's in there,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it is, rough budget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if everyone had a chance to look at it, but what was surprising was the, so we had to cross the stream. That must be obviously not Patrick Brook, but
It's the other.
one, the other small one there.
Right.
Yeah.
The one that comes down from CVU.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that one's, yeah, so that seemed to have some cost to it. I thought we had a free ride to the pump station,
Yeah.
but I guess not.
Yeah. That's definitely was.
Just be careful. That's
Oh.
kind of a 10,000-foot level. I don't have a lot.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of detail
Yeah,
on that, so I really just kind of throw. I know
well,
Eric.
then-
We
in
can look at
addition to
that.
that,
Which document number was that? That was the,
9E.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't want to jump ahead.
It's up
and
here right now.
No.
see these guys up here.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
that's okay. We can maybe just take a quick look and see if anybody had, all right, it wasn't 9A, it was
9E.
E, okay.
And then you'll see that Cindy Sprague also had another estimate based on her piece of it.
Right. So yeah, it's the well, Wayne has the 6,000 that's already spent on.
Right, and
yeah.
then she has an additional quote of, I think, around 30-some thousand.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. That's addition.
Right.
Yeah.
For the next steps that
Yeah,
will have
so
to take
it's
place.
700, 750, yeah. And the next.
So we're talking about $1 million.
Yeah.
It's a,
Yeah.
And the second train of microfiltration, I think, is a big cost
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, I mean, you
That's-
get the billing. I mean, I think honestly, this could be tightened up a lot better if we just spent a little bit more time on the details. It was
Yeah.
kind of a quick email.
Yeah.
I just wanted to.
Well, it gives
that's
us
kind
a
of like this
scale.
10,000
Yeah.
foot level. It may be Andrea, maybe the 750 is perfectly fine. We haven't spent much time on site, and confirmed things and all that. At least it gives you, a rough magnitude of where you could be at. So
Okay.
Right.
yeah.
What did our last well cost us? And the treatment center, treatment
that
thing?
was like 1.5, I think, roughly. Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's, that's what it's
Yeah.
seeming like.
Yeah.
It's like a
Yeah.
lot just to,
Yeah.
yeah.
And we'll look at what what it's permitted for at some point, right?
the building's
What
there this
percentage?
time.
That's
Right,
right.
So
right.
it's
Yeah,
the
the-
additional
yeah,
train, and
yeah.
it would
Yeah.
be,
It's a good location, but,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
So-
and the other well. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
right.
All right, I think that's
Okay.
good.
Okay,
But
great.
thanks.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Wayne.
Thank you.
All right, Alex, I think you're up with the municipal planning grant. Is that next?
Yep.
Yes. And I think you gave us a memo maybe, or something.
Synopsis of.
Yeah. That would be 6.
Yes, so just to refresh your memory, we apply for the municipal planning grant from the state of Vermont every year, or at least we try to. And it's one of the only sources of dedicated planning money that comes from the state for general planning purposes, non-transportation kinds of planning purposes. But it is a competitive system. It's competitive within a county. Chittenden County has a lot of planning going on because there's a lot happening here and there's a lot of professional staff. So it's pretty competitive. In any case, this year the Planning Commission was interested in applying for funds to help them move a project that they intend to be working on anyways, and to help move that project forward faster and maybe be a little more creative in how we approach that, especially the public engagement piece of it. So they've been working on proposed design standards for new development in the village growth area through most of this year. And they've segmented that into pieces. They want to sort of give you small batches of regulation improvements rather than saving it all up and having you have to look at a very large set of changes. So they're working on green space, open space provisions, and an update to the official map now. Once that concludes, hopefully, end of the year, first part of next year, they want to move on to architectural and streetscape design standards. And that's what this grant proposal would do, is to be able to bring some consulting horsepower in to help with that project, which would be hopefully a relatively brief in the planning world project of 6 to 9 months, and it would be a way for the Planning Commission to have somebody with some expertise provide visual examples to the community of what options are in terms of architecture and streetscapes, maybe some typical streetscape sections, and gauge public appetite for one versus the other, or certain types versus the other, in the hopes that we could have not exhaustive sort of form-based code the way some of the larger communities have done, but at least a fleshed out series of design standards that are more than what we have today. So today we talk about having moderate to steeply pitched roofs. We talk about garages 10 feet back from the front face of structures. We have provisions about the location of parking, but this might take us a bit further, and how much further is really part of the project to see, what's possible. Other communities have done similar work. The town of Westford, where I used to live and work, did something similar, and they had a pretty impressive visual preference survey, which used real photographs from around Vermont. And it was an engaging process. At least I had a good time with it. I think they had good public feedback. So we might do something similar depending on the consultant we hire and their imagination. Okay. So that's the outline of the project. The Planning Commission supports it. The maximum planning grant award, I think this cycle is $22,000. Yeah. We have plenty of local match to meet that. They actually changed their matching requirements in the last year, so it's less of a match than it used to be. But I don't have good cost estimates from consultants on ballpark. It's got to be within the scope of what we have funds to pay for, because it's a pretty targeted project and we're not looking to build a extensive form-based code. I'm confident we can do it within that range, but I still need to get some estimates back to support the grant application. Mm-hmm. If we're applying for 22,000 or something less than that, 18 or 15 or what have you.
And your timing to get this in is quick.
The application is due October 1st, and it requires sign off by both the Planning Commission and your board. The Planning Commission signed off last week.
Okay.
And my hope is that you would recognize the necessary resolution that the grant that was in your packet that has to be agreed to, and approve it tonight, so I could finish the application once I have those cost estimates.
That's this one here. Yeah.
Correct.
Are you gonna do an RFP for consultants, or,
If we get the grant, then we would
Okay.
probably do an RFQ. That's what the state recommends, instead of a full-blown RFP. So an RFQ, just like you did with the wastewater
which
folks, see who's qualified, and then from them, ask them for proposals. In the past, I've done just RFPs, but it could
Okay.
go either way.
And it's been a while since we've had.
but you're gonna try and get a sense by talking to people before October 1st?
Yeah, so I'm not
Okay.
doing an RFP or RFQ ahead
No,
of the
right,
application, but right now I'm just doing outreach to consultants saying,
Okay.
I'm giving them this synopsis and saying, I just need to know what the ballpark cost
Right.
is, so I
Yeah,
know how
okay.
much to plug in for
Yep,
the grant
yep.
number.
Yep.
Yep.
But
Yeah,
the
we haven't-
scope is not so big that it seems reasonable.
I think the scope's reasonable.
Yeah.
I really do need a consultant to confirm that. It helps with the grant application. They want to see that you've done that sort of
Yeah.
basic ballpark research. We have not received this grant since 2012, so it's been a few years. We did receive it for several years prior to that. So in the grand scheme of Chittenden County communities, we're not out of the norm, but it's been a while since we've gotten the funding.
Okay. Any more
Yeah,
questions?
this is exciting. This is something that we've been talking about for a long time. We, the collective we. I remember more than a conversation or two on the planning commission. It was important enough to put into our town plan. Like you just said, it's not. It's targeted and not particularly enormous. It's a tackle. You can tackle it in like one go. It doesn't keep going on and on and on. This is something that we could get done, and I would very much welcome this.
Was there any discussion about not wanting to reapply for what we didn't get last year, which was really about the sewer and
Yeah.
wastewater build-out? And so it feels like, man, if we'd had that, it would
Been helpful.
it would be helpful because we
Absolutely.
essentially are going to have to do that.
Right.
That work.
Right. There was discussion about that. The planning commission, I made them aware of the grant from last year and the one prior, which we also didn't get. And we talked about the grant program's priorities and point system for getting awarded the grant. There was some thought that, or at least I thought that project from last year still should be a competitive project.
Yes.
But I will say that there are infrastructure projects like that do talk about prioritizing and focusing on infrastructure within designated centers. And we don't have our village center designation at the moment. We lost it due to the fact that our
Yeah.
town plan didn't get updated in time for the expiration of the designation. And so I'm in the process of reapplying for that designation now. But my thought was, the planning commission didn't talk about it in this granularity, but my thought is that that project would be more competitive if we had the designation. Without the designation, I think it would be silly to apply for the same grant that we got denied last year. And we have
Right.
another project that's, a more traditional planning project
Yeah.
that we're actively going to
Yeah.
be working on as well, and could benefit.
But I do feel like that other, we're still in a, well, we'll know more from the engineering, but I still think that there's going to be some decisions that we have to make.
Yeah,
Based
well, I
on
was
the-
listening to your conversation before, and you asked Wayne the question about the economic sort of
Yeah.
analysis. I still think that needs to be done.
Yeah, he's
and
got that.
yeah, whoever's going to do that, you want to make sure has the chops to figure out that analysis.
Well, I think it will be imperative that he works closely with you in understanding what our regulations are allowing and,
Yeah.
what our capacity is, so.
Sure, yeah, but last year's project was about that, but was also, the hope was to get an economist who could actually run scenarios
Right.
and understand where the market is, and I don't know, just somebody who knows more about how to run economic analysis,
Yes.
more than I do.
Right, but I
and
mean, I
assume
think-
more than an engineer who knows how to build a
Yeah, I
wastewater
mean-
system can
Well,
do.
that's why I think we have to be, when we are talking on that level with him, we have to be sure that we're getting the information that's going to help us make that decision.
And either way, I mean, you're going to have to sort of look to the future and
Yeah.
say, well, what's the economy going to be like, and which could, throw a monkey wrench in everything,
Sure.
a lot of the development. All right, any more questions specifically on this application?
How long does it take to get the growth center designation?
It should be relatively quick. I'm meeting with their staff. There's a required site visit first week of October, and the downtown board meets monthly. There might be a hiccup around the holidays, but they've been goading me to get that designation back, because we could have applied any time since the town plan was adopted by your board last year, and I just haven't had
that was
time.
yep.
I haven't had time
And
to
it's
do
just
it.
a renewal, it's
It's
more or
not.
less.
It's a new designation because the last one lapsed. So
Right, but it's not like we're unknown, I guess.
no,
is my
it should
point.
be
And
a
there's
piece of
not that much
cake.
new information.
Yeah.
No, I think there'll be some more scrutiny about the boundaries of it and the like, but it should not be a problem
Yeah.
to get that designation back. Whether we get the second designation we had, which was for a neighborhood development area for the Norris development project, whether we get that back and whether we want to expand that to include more of the area around the village in these zoning districts that we've zoned for growth, that's a different question. But the village center designation should be straightforward. Timing though, probably January.
And that puts us out of this.
Yeah, because we have to have the application in by October 1st. We definitely won't have the designation by then. That's when we'd have to have it by.
But we're set for next year.
Yes,
what else
once
can
we
you
get
say?
it.
I mean, the time doesn't work is what I'm saying. There it is. There's nothing you can do about that.
Yeah.
All right, I'll make a motion that we sign the resolution for the municipal planning grant.
I'll second that.
Okay, any more discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye?
Aye. Andrea?
Aye. And that's going to be in this year's budget.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
It's in the planning and zoning budget, that
Okay.
$6,000 for match.
Yeah.
So when you come in for budget next year, you'll maybe be including something for another.
Oh yeah, yeah. It'll be a
Assuming we get it.
similar amount. And actually, well, if we don't need the full 6,000 for match, there may be money left in this fiscal year's planning
Yeah.
and zoning budget for another grant project that needs local match, or a UPWP project, that
Yeah.
requires some
All right, we'll add that to our pile to
to sign.
sign.
Thank you.
The next item, are you gonna stay for the
We need to
next
vote.
one or not? For the reviewing this Appendix E, which we've talked about 3 or 4 times?
I'm happy to sit here for it. Yeah, sure.
Sure, there might be a question or two. We'll pull it up. So I think,
Eric's.
yeah. So we've looked at this a couple times. Ideally, we have it done for July 1st, but there were some questions. And then I think the last time we made an adjustment. Let's see, what number is that one? That one is B, 7B?
7B.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was his update based on your conversation last
Right.
meeting.
And I think, so based on the increased capacity we've experienced, and we had at one time, I think, a 10% reserve, and then we talked about changing it to 5, and then adjusting Category 3, balancing that out. I think it was Category 3, no, 2. We made a change to 2, and so now he's gone back and recalculated this, I think exactly as we asked, the 7.2 permitted reserve.
So in category 3, it's not perfect 50/50, rounded
Right.
up to the nearest even
Yep.
efficient bedroom.
Which makes sense.
residential.
And I think we've brought up, if we need to change that, we can do that during the year, but we're hoping at this point, we'd move forward with this and then get our committee, allocation committee, continuing to work on this. So I think I'm ready to move forward with this and make a motion to approve.
Can you scroll up? I'm sorry, Phil.
No, it's all right.
I was looking to get this, but I didn't see it in the packet folder. So 7.2 is 13,000. sorry, is it all right if I address this, Phil?
Yeah.
Since you asked me to stay. My only confusion is I'm looking at the earlier version of this or an earlier version of this. Maybe it's 2 versions back. It's,
That's why we should.
We got about
write
10
version
versions,
numbers.
yeah,
So-
they need dates on
They
them.
need version numbers, yeah.
This is July 1 through June 30th.
Yeah.
That one is September 17th.
What is the reserve on the one you're looking at, and what is it?
10%.
10%,
And category 2 is divided 50/50?
Correct.
right.
So I think that's most recent,
Yeah.
previous to this one.
That's, I think, the previous one. It should
So-
if you scroll down to the bottom of yours, does it have a request for signature on the, yes, that's the previous one.
So my confusion is, maybe I'm just not doing the math right. If you go back up again, Renee, all right, so right there, the reserve has changed from 10% to 7.2.
Right.
Sounds like you had some discussion about 5, 10, split the difference, what have you.
Not really, but go ahead, yeah.
Okay, and then it says that changing that percentage drops the reserve from what I have as 19,350 gallons per day to only 13,900, which is about 5,500 gallons per day differential. But when you get to allocable capacity, the difference there, it's 27,364, but on this earlier version, it's 26,860, which is less than 1,000.
Oh, yeah, that was a typo, I think.
Oh,
I think we
okay.
talked about that being a typo, didn't we?
The 26,000.
Yeah, the 26.
And also,
that-
what was the actual water usage? Did you have the,
In the version I'm looking at, the actual water usage is 130,316.
okay.
That's the same, yeah.
I think this allocable capacity also changed based on the revised sheet that Eric did.
Approved allocations
Yes.
that have not yet been used. I
Yes.
see those
Yeah.
numbers. I didn't realize that. Those numbers have changed
They're
a lot.
reflected in there.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's ultimately your question, is making sure the allocable capacity
Yeah,
is
the reason I was
correct.
asking is that you're making these changes, and I'm looking down at category 3 on this old version. I'm
Yeah.
looking at category 3 on the new version, and they are 500 gallons per day different. So not much different, but the reserve went down by 5,000 gallons per day. So I'm like, well, how come
Yeah.
we don't have 5,000 more gallons? But it's all made up in what's already been allocated, because you allocated to several recently, and Eric did that.
adjusted.
Eric did that summary, which is more, okay. Sorry to take you backwards.
Good
but-
question, though.
Seems like
Yeah,
we
but
should
I
review
think it
this
is
document
really
every
important that
time
we do write
meet.
version numbers on them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
At
these
least
are
a
coming
date.
from, these are coming from Eric for his
Yeah.
draft.
Well,
Right, but
now, so-
he need, that's,
Yeah.
he needs,
in fact, I would start a policy, which I have at work. Nobody hands me any document
Without a date on it?
Without a date on it.
We have a similar one in the planning and zoning
Yeah.
office for applicants, like, yes, don't give us something if it doesn't have a date.
So Alex did bring up another good point, though, is that
Modified on.
reserve permitted capacity was 10%, and we talked about 5%, and I
No,
think,
the last time we
we
had
did
said it was
7.
gonna be.
did we talk
yeah.
about 7.2?
Yeah,
yeah.
it was going to be around 7%. And he calculated it exactly.
All right, good.
So the only other comment I have, hopefully you're aware of it, is I think your next agenda item is somebody
Yes.
looking for allocation out
Yeah.
of category 3 and
Yeah.
with a split that's not really a 50-50 split, but if you want to do this first and then go to that, that's your call.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
we're
I don't
not-
think we're gonna do any allocation tonight
doing any
anyways.
allocation.
Right, right.
And
But
I
you're
did
talking
mention
about it.
we can change this at any time.
Right. Okay,
So-
just clarifying.
So I'll put a motion on the table to accept the revisions to Appendix E. Primarily was that percent of reserve from the last time and Category 3 calculations.
Yep. Okay, I'll make that motion.
Oh, I think I did, but if you want to second it, sure.
Second, yeah.
Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Phew. I think this has been on 5 times or so.
It's like keeps going, recycling, recycling.
All right.
I think it's also confusing that the wastewater one is Appendix E also.
Yeah.
You know, of a different
Of
document.
a different document, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well, they're
Well-
kind of moving numbers. I mean, it's water, the numbers are pretty fluid, so I appreciate that we've gone over it so many times.
so we'll have to take the draft off there and sign it with today's date, I think.
On the bottom, yeah,
Yeah.
there's a line, and there should be a line at
Right.
the bottom of it. We
Yeah.
will make a line if there's not.
There
Yes,
is.
there
Yeah.
is.
And then, and really, we should have the wastewater one up on the website.
Yes. I got the note.
Now we should have both of them on the,
Yeah,
and that way we can hopefully
okay.
find them.
Next item on the agenda, there's two for BlackRock. I think two, yes. One is really the first time we get to look at a potential allocation request. And this is I guess it's a phase one of this.
Yes, so just to give you a little backstory.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
We, phase one has,
Maybe just introduce yourself. Yeah, sorry.
for the record, Ben
Yeah.
Avery with BlackRock Construction in South Burlington, Vermont. The way we approached the phase one planning for Haystack was based on the original concept that we worked through with staff, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
2.5 years ago?
I think we're still here, yeah.
And that fundamental concept was a natural extension of existing settlement. So moving across the brook to expand both in a residential and a commercial capacity, working towards Ballard's Corners. The one big item that, from an infrastructure standpoint, that in working through the traffic planning, which we've had RSG do a complete top-down traffic study for both the phasing and the full build-out, because we anticipated that being a large conversation with the DRB. It became pretty clear that we were going to need to build the road in from Shelburne Falls Road. So that Haystack Drive, as it comes in, it will have to be part of phase one. So adding that to the mix, we then went to and had some initial conversations with Brian Bouzier, should I say some follow-up conversations, which were productive. And
Because he's the property owner.
Correct.
Between Haystack and across the street NRG.
correct. And we didn't feel it was appropriate to necessarily memorialize that till we got through this process and made sure that we could, once we have some allocation, then we can make a preliminary plat application. So we've had the discussions with Bouzier, and we are hoping that, following this process, we'll memorialize that, and that will give us a second access point onto Route 7. And the
116.
or
Yeah,
116,
That's
excuse
the
me.
Riggs Road extension.
Correct. And sort of leave it at that. There's still a lot of discussion about how it might interact there and how it'll roll out with the phase one. But then we got to looking at okay, so now we have a portion of water available, and then we also have a well development agreement. So we obviously want to have some access to available water, because that way, if in some strange world we move through the preliminary final and Act 250 process in the next 12 months, and we're not there yet with water online, it leaves us, at least it gives us something that we can start with. So that was attractive, and we came up with a concept for a phase one light. Met with staff, and Alex and Mitch both encouraged us to look at a concept of a comprehensive phase one that included, really building out that whole first southern section. And came up with the concept of, as a group, we discussed the idea of sort of, from an allocation perspective, bifurcating it. So Phase 1A is what's in front of you this evening, and then
Develop to the west, let's say. The
correct
western
to the
corner.
southwest.
Yep.
And then after we drill the well, then we would come back before this board for 1B, and then once we had both, we would proceed to preliminary plat. Some of how we came up with the 1A numbers, which are a little further skewed than the 75-25% for Cat 3, is we wanted to have a layout from an infrastructure and development standpoint that sort of made sense in the event there was a gap in timing. So let's say we built out 1A and there was a triple delay on the water and there was going to be a year before we could do anything. It just, the way it laid out, we wanted it to lay out in a sensible approach. So everything west of Haystack was 1A. That makes it very easy to build that out from a traffic aspect. That particular section of the development could come in and out of Haystack Way fairly easily, with really minimal impacts to anything. Then when we build the second part of it, that's when we would find the secondary connection and make it. And part of the balance of this too is by including the senior living in Phase 1A, it sucks up a ton of the water. So in order to add one of those other large buildings marked G, J, or K, that would put us over what your allocable water is right now. So we sort of came up with an application before you tonight of what fits in your available water box.
The existing water
in the
box.
existing water box, and not sucking all of it up. There's still water left for somebody to come in with a smaller project, and it lightens the lift a little on the well, so it puts a little less expectation and pressure on that, and just from a build-out standpoint, it rolls out a bit better. The other part of the application before you tonight is a proposal to include the senior care and some subsidized affordable housing as a Category 1 allocation. So the big one, obviously, is the senior. The other, there's room for it to go either way. We feel like subsidized affordable is a serious community benefit, but the senior's the big number, no question. I think it's almost 6,000 GPD. That's something that doesn't exist in Hinesburg right now on a large scale. We feel very comfortable with it because it's a business that we're in other communities. We have partners in the business. We have operating partners. We have ownership interest in other facilities. It's very in the box for us to include that up front. And certainly in meeting with the various housing committees and going through this process over the last several years, that seems to be a need that is desired across the board. And that, having that as the anchor, really for the first phase, I think sets a tone, certainly that we're looking to work with the town, to work with the DRB, and and saying we're listening to the community and what they say they need. So the sort of, in summary, the three unconventional items with this in order are the bifurcation of that allocation request, number one, although it's fairly straightforward. We have an application for something that's available. But we are asking you to look at the bigger picture as you look at the second item, which is a shifting of the balances in the categories. And then lastly, considering the senior and subsidized affordable as category 1 items. And I agree with Mary Lee, the numbers move so often. It's
Yeah. I just gotta go back to the Appendix C again and look at the categories. 7B. So again, yeah, I'm gonna just ask you to repeat, you sort of summarize was it 3 pieces?
correct.
Is it possible to do that again?
Certainly. So, just speaking in water,
Yeah.
and I have the benefit of having a spreadsheet that you don't have.
Well, we have this one here.
Yeah,
so
but-
that's what I'd like to know is where.
I whipped one up this afternoon that would be the balance of phase 1.
Well, it would really be
I would be-
helpful to see that.
I will give you the number. You want to make copies? That would be great. That would be wonderful.
And,
Yeah, right here.
here. Got it? Here, I got it.
Very handy.
That's, I have to say, whenever I asked for the keys to the car from my dad, he had some keys there, and he would always pull it up and hand it to me like this, and I would go to grab it, and he'd go, just once like that, and it was like, so I do that now too. I'm like, here's the key. Oh, yeah, okay.
Long live Dad.
So this,
So
this design flow summary, so we're calling this Phase 1A, right?
Correct.
Okay,
A is in available water.
okay,
Think
yeah.
of it that way.
And it's the southwestern corner, which includes
The senior care.
the senior care.
Yeah, can we just step back also a little bit and understand the process of how we got here and the fact that this was denied sketch plan approval by our DRB, and we're moving forward because you got court approval for sketch plan, but none of this has gone back to the DRB.
Not really. So Ben has been working with staff
Yeah.
on getting a preliminary application together, and he's been talking with us about phasing for a couple of years. In February of this year, he approached us and said, I'd really like to just give the DRB an update. I don't want to come in with an application, but I want to tell them what we're thinking of. And I was a little less enthusiastic about that because everything must be an application. But Mitch said, no, this will be a good thing. So they did come in and give the DRB an update. No decisions were made. There weren't any permits being asked for, but they did talk about phase 1 and what they were thinking of applying for preliminary plat.
So, but my question then is like, how much of the master plan are we obligated to fulfill based on the court order? I mean, where does that fit in?
100% of it.
Yeah, the master plan.
So
that
the master
court
plan was
approved,
more than there's
It was everything. It was the entire project that got sketch plan approval.
right, so, but sketch plan approval, does that mean that the layout of the roads and everything that's in there is, we're obligated to accept that?
It's a complicated question, Andrea, in part because we haven't had very many situations like this, so the legal precedent in Hinesburg isn't there, but in part because what BlackRock is coming back to ask for preliminary approval of is not the sketch plan that they received court approval for.
It's a portion of it.
It's a piece of that.
I understand
And
that.
so the DRB is gonna have to look at that and say, are we okay with you applying for only a piece of what you got a sketch plan approval for? That was part of the reason for coming in February, was to give them a heads up, without them having to answer the question. So your question is everything else in the master plan that's grayed out, is that, can we talk about that? And I think the answer in my mind is yes, because what's really being applied for is phase one, and we're gonna have lots of engineering detail on that, and everything else beyond it is gonna remain a concept that, you know, can flex or eventually change when the next phase is asked for.
That said, there are some stormwater aspects, infrastructure aspects that we will have to plan for the whole project.
Yeah.
So
And your traffic study is based on.
and our traffic studies based
overall.
on
Right,
the
I mean, because
overall, so-
there's like, I'm, you know, I was looking at that phase one for the first time and trying to understand the relationship of the court order and this and the layout of the roads and the stormwater system, and because there hasn't been all the engineering done for that, what opportunities there are, or I guess a major concern of mine was that the stormwater system appears to be on town land. The detention pond.
It is not.
No, it's not on the rec field land?
It's not.
I don't think so,
regular.
no, it's immediately adjacent to it.
Oh,
The rec
okay.
fields
We
are
have the
designed
map,
to
we can
drain
pull that
into
up.
it, actually.
Okay.
And I would also add that we have taken the added step before our stormwater design for this is somewhat complete.
This is the one in the southwest
Yeah.
corner.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
Most of the bones of our preliminary plat application are complete. So while I've been working on these components, Dave Marshall's been working on the engineering
Right.
components. And I know that Dave has had a couple, I think, extensive discussions with Mitch, because I've been very clear with Dave that I wanted staff input before we submitted the plan, so there weren't questions after. And based on certainly the willingness of staff to work with our team, and based on my experience with Dave, I would be very surprised if what he came up with was drastically different than what he's discussed with Mitch. So
So it is, so I guess this plan was a little difficult to read because there's nothing labeled on it. You know, the wetlands, I mean, there's graphic representation, but there's no words on there. So I would ask that,
we can
you know,
add that.
you can add that anything that is submitted needs to have labels and a key or notes or something like that. And so I just was not aware. I mean, I felt like it wasn't readily apparent to me that the stormwater pond was on your land. And also just.
Actually, I believe the property lines are on there.
Yeah, but there's no key that tells me what's a property line versus a flood erosion, a floodplain line,
Duly
an
noted.
FEH line, you know, all that, so.
But it is in the agricultural district, and so is the parking lot. What does that mean?
You know, this,
Yeah,
we're not
okay.
the DRB. We're just talking about a potential phase 1A.
And the parking lot is not a
and what
part
the
of our plan
allocation-
either. That's a municipal, that is the town rec
Right.
fields.
That's the rec fields, yeah. But I guess I wanted to understand where we are in terms of jumping ahead of the DRB and giving this allocation
Right.
or sketch plan or
As
report.
I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, I need to obtain allocation from this board before I can apply for the preliminary plat. So
Yep.
I'm in the right order, am I not?
That's how I
Yeah,
understand
I
it,
just,
yeah.
you know, we have not been kept abreast of where everything is in terms of the court and, you know, all that stuff. So I just wanted
Fair
to
enough, yeah.
have
I
that
think that's
in the
reasonable.
background.
But I mean, I think today we're just sort of getting this overview of, you know, kind of what you're looking at, how the phasing would work, and how it impacts our water and wastewater allocation.
Correct.
One thing I think you would benefit from having, in addition to
table of contents, or not table of contents, a key on the map that Andrew's
Yeah.
talking about is Ben's provided you with a table of sorts that tells you what the allocation request is.
Yep.
And he's broken it out by category
Yep.
and by
Yeah, we have that.
residential and non-residential. But what I had to spend some time calculating was the way we give out allocation in category 3 is by residential and non-residential. Those numbers aren't on that piece of paper, those aggregates. So I have them. I did the math. So it wouldn't be hard for Van or myself to supply those for your next meeting. But in order to make the allocation, you need to know how much you're allocating to residential and non-residential.
Non-residential
Category 3.
being enterprise
Correct.
on this chart, on this.
Yeah, well,
on
he
E.
has it all identified for which are residential units and which are
But
commercial.
there's no total, is what I'm saying.
For each box.
If I asked you how much in category 3 is residential, you couldn't tell me from this table, you'd have to do some math. All I'm saying is it'd be good to do the math.
That would
And
be good,
Part of
yeah.
why I'm saying that is when you do the math, and then you look at the Appendix E that you just approved.
We would see it
you're
doesn't
gonna
match
see how
up
much
and
is-
what's
yeah,
left.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
You'll be much more easily
Yeah.
to
Agreed.
assess that.
That would be helpful.
And it is, as I said earlier, it is out of skew even from what you just approved.
Yeah.
However, also, as I said earlier, I'm sort of asking the board to look at the bigger picture.
Yeah.
So that what we don't have in front of you is an allocation with a whole bunch of stuff over here and then something on an island over here. You know, we want the build out to flow in a sensible manner. So that's why it's balanced that way.
And as far as, I mean, I think it makes sense that, you know, we have the senior housing, you know, what each category is. I mean, we're looking at that falling within category 1, I guess, institutional.
That's what he's asking.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And are those defined any more than what appears to be? Okay.
No, it's
So-
something that I think the wastewater committee that Andrea and Aaron and I are serving on would
Talked
like to
about,
see
yeah.
some fleshed out in what
I mean, it
it's
makes
about.
sense, but, you know, I'm just making sure it's not defined somewhere else.
It's not to my knowledge, it's just as it's described in
Yeah.
the existing ordinance.
It would seem like it would fall under that.
So which is the senior?
Building H, it's the
Building
big one.
H.
Could I ask you a little bit about senior housing?
Sure.
We've been here before where we've given allocation for senior housing, and it's never gotten built. And so before I'm willing to make any allocations, I would need to see, you know, examples of how you've gone about doing that before, what those contracts are, what exactly your definition of, you know, what is senior housing, and
Well, that would be helpful so that we can say, okay, that seems to meet the institutional.
right,
You
because
know,
if it's, you know, what's happened before is it just didn't happen, and we ended up with all single-family residential.
Yeah, we had a developer who had no expertise or experience in it, but had an idea.
Well, it
And
was,
got that idea approved through the DRB with allocation, and then wasn't able to deliver on the product and ended up revising the project accordingly.
I would differ with that, but.
Two things.
Yeah,
Our firm has developed 138 houses of senior in New Hampshire. We are in the process of building out a just shy of 200 unit campus in Essex right now. Alex drives by it all the time. We have an early stage project we're beginning in Burlington, which is an independent living project, and we're in the process of developing 120 units in Colony, New York. So we have worked with Centio Healthcare Properties from Orlando, Florida. We've worked with Kane Anderson Realty, which is a huge REIT out of Los Angeles. We have active deals with them. We currently are working with Woodbridge Senior Living, which is a subsidiary-ish of Hall Keene, which was the major developer in Winooski. So these are people who do business in Vermont, they own property in Vermont, and we have existing and ongoing business relationships with. So anybody who wants to see our senior housing, if the board just let me know, I'm happy to
Well, I
get you
guess-
a tour at the memory care facility in Essex. That's not a problem.
But this, you don't expect this to be a memory care?
No.
So
we
just
anticipate
what would it be?
We anticipate this to be independent living. Really, the big question in our mind that we would need to solve via pro forma is, does it have centralized dining or not? And if it has centralized dining, it has effects on cost.
So some company would really run it.
Correct. So the differentiator
It's not going to be
is-
a housing. It's not going to be a condo association.
So we have
right.
two models of independent care or independent living. One model is what we call sort of light. It's 55 and up. It's a model that features a residential care coordinator that's a full-time employee who helps residents coordinate in-home health care, activities, things like that. But really, it's not any sort of managed care. It's somebody there, and then a maintenance person who really spends most of their time in these facilities, like fixing the remote, things like that. It's a lot of the things that we do for our parents. My mother, I haven't watched TV in 3 days. I gotta fix it. So those sorts of things, and so it's not assisted in any way. There's just some management involved in the building to help day-to-day life. That is something that we might manage depending on the ownership structure. If we sell the whole thing, then probably not. But if we retained a portion of ownership, we might do that management and employ that person or those people. The other is a centralized dining model that's usually more associated with a subsidized care model, which is different. That is something we don't do. We don't employ food service. We don't do all of that. I think the challenge here is in a 50-unit facility, it's hard to get the math to work on centralized dining. So what that does is it skews costs up, which again, through subsidies, they cover some of it, but the contribution can also go up, and it can just make it harder. I mean, you can get into a situation where a subsidized model costs as much as a market rate model. And is that really how the seniors in the community are using it? I mean, if it's on an island, like the ones down at Exit 4 in Randolph, there isn't really any place for people to walk to or go to. So the centralized dining becomes a more important feature. I think one of the interesting parts about Hinesburg is, as this builds out, when we look at Hinesburg, hopefully 5 years or 10 years from now, this thing is geographically located right in the middle of it. So in theory, this is a location where people could walk to basic services, walk to a restaurant, maybe someday walk to the grocery store, who knows? But I think it's something to be worked through. I can tell you that we've talked extensively with our partners about this, not internal partners, but our senior care groups that we work with. They've leaned more towards a, senior apartment model as opposed to a centralized dining, more managed model, simply because of the numbers. And they're concerned pushing it over 50 or 60 units. They wouldn't want to. So in Colony, I'm building 120, but that's suburban Albany. So, 50 seems to be a sweet spot that they're happy with. And I do rely on their input. They know what they're doing. They're
So have
professionals.
they done a kind of a market analysis of understanding what Hinesburg is and who would, what would make the most sense?
So we have several market studies on Chittenden County. The market studies do not focus on a town the size of Hinesburg. I mean, these are all
Right.
tertiary. It's all part of the global mix. And so what they look at is, you know, the nucleus of care. One of the things that Hinesburg geographically benefits from, and this is my anecdotal input, is you've got a huge amount of senior care being developed in Essex right now. That's probably more beds than any place else in the county. And the only stuff that's really in proximity to Hinesburg is the most expensive stuff in Shelburne. So the Arbors and Shelburne Bay, which are on the upper end of the cost spectrum, north of 10,000 for memory care at the Arbors, and Shelburne Bay is running anywhere from 4.5 to 8,000 a month. So we have models where we can land something significantly under that price, which we think fits better into this market. You know, I can't, you know, can I tell you exactly what the building looks like right now? I have no idea.
No, I don't care what the building looks like. What I'm concerned with is that it actually is going to be an economically viable project for you and going to meet, you know, that i.e. meets the needs of Hinesburg or the surrounding community.
I can
And
tell
so-
you with assurance that this and the single-family homes are the most economically viable part of this project. I worry a lot more about all the commercial. Let's just face it, there's empty commercial here now. The commercial rental rates are not great. That scares me way more than the senior care. The senior care does not concern me at all. You have a lack of it. There's clearly a demand. The primary competition is twice the price for basically the same care. The senior care here is a bit of a layup. That one's easy. It's the other components that make me more concerned. And if I was worried about this, I wouldn't put it up front. You know, things that you're more concerned about when you're speaking economically, when you're developing a project like this, you want to put the stuff that you're not sure about way at the back end, because that's the stuff that's a boat anchor. And the way projects die is you bring something forth, and this is the struggle I have with the DRB. Everybody at the DRB, or a lot of folks at the DRB, would love to see lots of square footage out there. And so the push and pull for me is you know, I can't afford to have a whole bunch of buildings sit empty. So sort of a good combo for me is to take something I know that works, that I know there's a community need, and put it out front. And so that's where we landed with the senior care. To answer your question of how do you hold our feet to the fire, I would assume that if you move this through under a category 1 as senior care, that the DRB would, you know, restrict me to 55 and up housing, or however they want to. They can't really dictate care, but
Right, I mean, when you say senior care, I mean, if it's just apartment buildings for 55 and under, then.
Over.
Over 55 and over, then, you know, to me, it wouldn't be institutional unless
Right.
there was a price advantage that sort of says it's affordable senior
Well,
housing,
one
you
of the
know?
problems that we all have right now is I reached out to Champlain Housing Trust, and this is high math, and I'm not an affordable specialist. I'm not a subsidized care specialist. It's not really our bailiwick. It's not a lot of what we do. However, there are several large projects in Burlington that have sucked the air out of the room as far as funding for these types of projects, to the point at which, and I don't mind saying it on the record because I had the phone conversation. I was told that there was a discussion between that organization and another developer here in Hinesburg, and that they weren't interested in meeting with us because there was a discussion with an adjacent developer, and I said, well, I'm ahead of them. And they said, well, we've spoken to her, and that's where we're going to let the cards lie right now. So if anybody can shake loose a meeting for me with Champlain Housing Trust, I'm happy to take it. But I also can't come before you and say I'm going to do something and have an organization that internally, for whatever reason, or for multiple reasons, one of them is lack of availability of funds because of what's going on in that economic space right now, and the oath of obligation to another developer. That's out of my control and not my problem. It's and I don't think it's fair to hold us to that standard. I think that we come before you, we're very genuine. We are going to build a senior product. If I could sell it for what I can sell these things for to a nonprofit, I would probably do that up front. It would bring a lot of cash into the project up front. But I can't sell it if they're not going to buy it. And there's really only one or two buyers. And I've met with the other organization. So it's you've got a couple of things going on. And I mentioned the projects in Burlington that have sucked up a lot of the money because that's how the other nonprofit agency explained it to me. They said there's just crumbs.
Cathedral Square.
No, it was one of the housing trusts. So who does do some stuff in that space, but they were nice enough to explain the economic challenges. So the long and short is I think that I think there is a way for the DRB to, 55 and up is 55 and up. That is a recognized designation. I can't turn it into a multifamily apartment building. That.
But 55 and up isn't necessarily institutional. I don't know,
Yeah,
and I'm just sort of saying on the top of my head, I'm just saying that. Maybe it is, but anyways, I just want to bring us back. So, I'll just ask you, so what are you thinking, just so we know, what's your timing? What are you looking for?
For as far as allocation?
Yeah. What's your...
We have a preliminary plat application that's 80% complete. The timing we see in this is we are hoping to get this allocation in a couple of meetings, because I know it takes a couple of meetings. And then we are hoping that will coincide. Eric, before he left, we discussed the permit application was approved, so we're planning to drill at some point in October.
Yeah, so that'd be for the next phase.
Well, remember that I have to do that too before I can bring forth that preliminary plat. So this is one step, and then I'll be back, and then the other one is sort of a different step because it's done under the well development agreement, although the process is basically the same. So we're really trying to get it to coincide. It's our goal to submit a preliminary plat application in the fourth quarter, and to have review going on, first of the year. So, this is the available water. So this is stop one. We'll get through this process. I am trying to sort of do them concurrently, so that our approval for this sort of falls in line with us drilling the well. And then we go from there.
I've got some questions about the senior housing. So I'm familiar with two kinds. One is where if you're 55 or older, it's a reduced rate to own a condo or a townhouse or whatever it is. And the other is, like you described, the Arbors or Shelburne Bay or Wake Robin, where you don't own anything. You pay a monthly fee for as long as you're there.
Yes, this would be a rental model.
Right. So if it's 55 and up, and you're not going to be able to do reduced cost, what's the point of? What's the difference?
Well, it has to fit, in order for it to economically be viable, it has to fit into a cost model that works in the market. So we're working on some models for Burlington, which are surprisingly low. Given what the average in the market is. The average independent housing rate in the market is $3,600 a month. That includes meals. But but that's the average rate of what senior housing, independent living costs here. The average for assisted is, this one I don't know off the top of my head, it's right around 5,000, and then the average for memory is 71 or
But
7,200.
you're not talking about those, you're talking about people would buy condos.
No,
she's saying rental.
these are rentals. This would be a rental building.
Okay.
So the buy-in model is complicated. Wake Robin does that. No one else does it.
I didn't know they did that.
That's just a completely different
It's a different, yeah.
business model and structure.
Oh, my brother has a place out in California in San Jose, and the only thing is you have to be over 55, and then the cost is considerably less than if he went someplace else. But that's all it's got, really, to call it senior housing. That's why I was curious.
Well, a lot of what it does is it fixes rates. So all senior housing, everything is included. So from a budgeting standpoint for seniors, they're able to do that. And then offering some amount of what we're really looking at, where the trend is shifting nationally, is, as you know, UVM Medical Center is moving more into the field. Your community knows that more than anybody, by expanding in community health facilities. And the trend in senior living nationally is to bring more and more features into the building. So that residential care coordinator doesn't just answer the phone. What that person does is they coordinate with the physical therapy groups in the area. They coordinate with yoga in the area, things like that. And then those services are happening in the building. So PT comes in 3 times a week. So instead of seniors needing to figure out transportation to Burlington or South Burlington or Tilly or whatever, we're helping that happen in home. And really, home health care is a growing market. And these types of facilities allow for fixed cost living, and they provide staffing that is helping to coordinate that. And again, oftentimes it's the business they call the decision makers. So it's the children who are managing, mom's got this person coming in on Tuesday, she's got this person coming in on Thursday, she has, whatever instruction or group, and so all of those things get managed by the building. And it does make it easier as well for folks who don't have a big support network, who
Yeah.
don't have kids
So
and
you have some
families.
support there, and then I imagine there's some community space in these buildings.
Oh yeah, it's the one that we're starting right now in Essex has roughly 30% common space. So it has a lounge, it has a main gathering room, which can be used for activities, or it can be used for
Private event.
private
maybe.
events. You can book the private event. That facility has a separate fitness room that folks can use. I think that one has a screening room. That's something that I don't know if it makes sense in this forum, but I'd be happy to email you the plans for that so you can see an idea of what we're talking
So I
about.
want to get us back on track
This
here.
does sound institutional now that you've described it more fully.
Something
It's-
like that.
Yeah.
The big question is food. And that's the whole question, is do you have centralized dining or not?
But you're offering a lot of other facilities that are institutional-like. It's
Well,
not
these
like
are-
somebody's
These
just
are
renting an apartment.
possibilities.
Right.
So, yeah, the DRB will get into that. I think what
But we
would
need
be
to-
helpful, we need to understand, I think what would be helpful would be to take the data we have for phase 1A and 1B, and then to fit it into those categories, just so we can say,
You can see where it's
for example, if we
balancing.
wanted to do it today, we'd be like, well, wait a minute, can we or not? And then we can look at what's left over and have a discussion maybe with Alex of what else is on the plate, and how does that affect any of the other developments, and what are their timings. So I think those are the kind of things we could have maybe at the next meeting.
And that was sort of my goal for the
just
evening,
get
is
the
to
ball rolling.
familiarize you with try and answer the technical questions,
Yeah.
if you will, of the application?
Well, I think we might have more, I think, that question of, how do we know that it fits in those categories? That I think that's a reasonable question. So the purpose of those categories is to have diverse development, not just, single-family homes, for example.
And the other category or the other item that we did put in that category is the 5 affordable housing
Yeah,
units, which
yeah.
we're fine for that to be Section 8 or however
Or permanently affordable, I mean, not subsidized, but just permanently affordable.
Yeah, either way, sort of the same.
Well, because sometimes Section 8 is, is more dependent on what the land, I don't know,
I think what would be helpful, one thing that if you want to do would be we're going to have these categories and sort of say, here's how we're justifying that it fits that category. Here's what we're shooting for. Here's what you can expect, kind of a thing.
Yeah, I'd be happy
And
to
that
prepare a
would be helpful.
narrative
Yeah.
and forward
A simple
to
one,
Renee,
yeah.
just a real simple narrative of these
Yeah.
two components that we're asking for a Category 1 designation on, with a little build out and background, if
That would
that's
be helpful, I think.
And that category 1 is institutional, as you keep referring to it, Phil, and then there is a definition of institutional that talks about these
Yeah.
items that we keep saying, so
Yeah.
tying it back to that would be good.
Yep.
Elderly housing is one of the possibilities at
Yeah.
your discretion.
Yeah.
Affordable housing is another one, but again, at your
Right.
discretion.
And for me, I think it would be good to say, okay, if we do that, and here's a chunk of our allocation, is there anything else in the horizon or something that we should be saving allocation for? I don't know.
the other thing is, do we have the housing needs assessment report?
It is on the website, yes.
Okay.
It has
Oh,
been
okay,
for
that
some
would be
time.
good to see, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so can we move on? Okay, are you okay? Did you have anything
good.
else? All right, and now we're on to number 9. And next steps. Did we have some, I'm sure there's documents in here,
There's
but
a lot
I
of
don't,
documents in
yeah,
there. There's the original application,
yeah,
as well as the approval, and then the next steps, from Cindy Sprague.
yeah.
And then the brief email that Wayne went over with you
Yes.
guys, the cost estimates, and then there is actually a estimate from, for the well drilling from Vermont Well and Pump.
But again, there's no real action for us. We asked for some of this information
Right, you asked,
last
you just
time.
wanted to know what the
Yeah,
next steps
What are
were,
the
and
next
so,
steps? And so he
and you
did
wanted to see a
provide
copy of
that.
the application, and I believe so.
And again, I mean, the cost on that estimate was shocking, I guess.
Yeah, right.
But realistic, I think.
Yeah.
It does appear, I'll speak for myself, it does appear like it really ends up being a fairly decent option. If we need to expand water, it's in the vicinity. And we knew this was something we were going to have to deal with. And we had a little reprieve by getting more efficiency out of our existing system.
On 9D, which are the maps,
Yeah, those were the
There's a lot of
attachments to the
maps in there.
application.
yeah, I think that there's a mislabel. That where it says Patrick Brook, it's the canal.
That was what Cindy submitted
Yeah,
for the
we-
source permit application.
Yeah, so that we really need to verify, because right now that's Patrick Canal, and the other one is Patrick Brook.
Is it, show it more to the east is where you get that?
Where it says well number 6 is next
Which
to
map?
Patrick. I am looking on,
The first one there?
well, that one doesn't have, it's the second map.
Second.
This is
on
attachment C,
9D,
right?
on item number
Yeah.
9D, the second map,
Yeah,
there's
it's right there. See, it says Patrick Brook below where the well is.
below where it says Farm All Drive.
yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So
You're right, that's the canal.
That's
Yeah.
the canal. And the other one needs to be labeled Patrick Brook. So,
Yeah, I don't know where she,
well, if you're looking on old maps, there's a
A&R,
lot
looks
of.
like it's from the A&R, Vermont Agency of Natural
Well,
Resources.
maybe
Yeah,
that
but,
is the-
well, we really better clarify that then,
Might be good
I
too.
think.
And in the BlackRock maps, I think we have that circle which shows the location of the well and like a solar array or something that
Yeah.
is utilized that space.
Yeah, Mike Busher did a little research, so we talked about what are the options for that space. Sort of, do we need a community garden on top of the community garden?
Yeah,
And apparently, solar arrays in well protection areas is something
A
they've
good
worked
match.
on other parts of the state, so it's a good match. And that particular positioning of the array, due southern exposure, and because of the setbacks on the brook, there's no risk of, future development.
Yeah, yeah.
Casting a shadow, so to speak, so it seems like a perfect use in there.
It's definitely on the A&R website.
Yeah, I don't know, I guess I would just.
We could tell Sprague, maybe.
And we can call, I can call Gretchen Alexander in the Rivers program and just get some clarity, because if it's an unnamed stream, there just might be some different criteria that,
Okay. Good eye.
okay.
Is there anything else that anybody had any questions about?
Yeah, how close is well 6 to what we now know is Patrick Brook?
Well, you can see it on the map.
Yeah, I know I can see it on the map, but I don't have a scale.
The
So-
map should, have scale.
Is well 6 the,
You're well.
this well?
Yeah.
Hang on, I think this map has a lot.
I mean, the
Yeah, it does have a
location of that
scale,
well gets
yeah.
approved by the state, so there's not a concern about it being too close.
It's
Okay.
150 from edge of bank.
That's something they definitely will be looking at, along with everything else in that
Oh,
circle,
we had
and
that-
everything around it.
We had to get this, before we even drilled the test
Yeah.
well, we floated this
Yeah.
balloon to the state, and so that's all been approved. So it's 150 from top of bank, it's 200 from the nearest structure of any kind, and it's 125 setback from the street. So, and some of that they wanted to see was at least 30 feet of clay, or something like that.
Before the bedrock or
Before- and
something.
there's like 120 feet
Yeah.
of clay to bedrock, so
So,
we've got.
all indications are that it looks like a good spot.
Okay, good.
And so far, we'll see what it produces in the end. But
All our
we gotta
fingers
get
crossed
more.
on that one.
Yeah, we gotta get more, I would think.
In terms of next steps, is the next step for BlackRock to drill?
Well, I think, yeah, and then we have to do the 12-inch
Yeah,
or
actually,
two, right?
yeah, the way it'll work is they'll probably do the 12-inch, not the concrete, not the
Right.
expensive part.
Yeah.
But you'll drill to the bedrock, the
Yeah.
12-inch first, so that we're not polluting what's below. And then we keep going beyond
down.
that. And then we've also got to backfill in or decommission the test well. So that's sort of the way the process works. And then what they'll do, once they have it all opened up, they'll do pump down tests.
Yep.
That's where we get our data. And then they'll do a head pressure test, which is under the terms of the development agreement. That's the number we need to come to you. And actually based on you'll see the phase 1B, I mean, it's only 11,000 GPD. We, even based on the test well estimates, our share of
That
that
percentage, yeah.
was gonna be like 3 times that.
Yeah.
So, it's a good threshold, but they'll do that raw test. I'm doing Eric's job here. And then assuming that passes muster and everybody's happy, then they'll commence the larger pump down test, which I'm not an engineer, so I know that's over time, and they look at impacts to
They'll check the other wells.
wells
Yeah.
and all
where
of
Yeah.
that.
Cindy's
And
next
there's,
steps come.
yeah, and there's no action required for us. I think we've approved to move forward for the next,
Right,
the next
so,
steps.
yeah, so that Cindy provided on 9H is her next steps. That would be in her process. And she just needs to know when you guys are wanting her to move forward, when to move forward on her piece, because she really won't have the availability this fall. It'll be next spring when she can do her work, because she's having some surgery. And I think, didn't Eric talk about next spring as
Yeah, I think,
when he would actually,
Okay.
but this allows us to get all the data in on the front end, so that when she's ready to go, we have everything ready to go. Also gives you folks, I would think, a little more comfort in talking about next financial steps of how
Right.
you're gonna develop it. It would be, even if if the raw water or the raw pump down is a huge number, as the Wayner well was, then you can with some comfort begin discussions
Yep.
of how it's all gonna get paid
Right, how do
for.
we actually do
And
this?
conversely,
Yeah.
if we drill it and we've got 18 gallons a minute out there, then you don't need to spend a
Right.
whole bunch of time talking about it.
Yeah.
Because it's not gonna happen. So that's, I think for everybody, Eric and I discussed it, and it seems like it'd be good to at least have the base data for
Yeah,
that.
I think the next steps make total sense. All right, are there any other questions? I just am looking at our agenda and the time. Are you good with us?
I'm
then?
good.
Yeah. All right. Next item, thank you very much.
No
Yes,
problem,
thank you.
thank you.
Next item on the agenda, consider Amendment 4 to the engineering work associated with the Village North Sidewalk project. This is a slight change in the scope, I think. Just from concrete to asphalt, or?
right, but the idea is to have the asphalt be as an adult possibility.
Oh,
So
okay,
that when they
good,
bid, they're
yeah.
gonna bid on both.
Yeah,
So that if, depending on what the bid climate comes in at, if there's, a good pricing, perhaps we could choose to go back to concrete, or however, we'd be sort of in the driver's seat based on the pricing that comes back, to see if it fits within the amount that we have.
and
Decide on the
there
match
was
that-
some additional funds we needed, and it
Yes.
sounds like the landowner
Yep, so
is
she's
moving forward with
going to have
that.
her attorney drop a document for us that says that she's willing to provide a certain amount, up to a not to
Okay.
exceed
Yeah,
amount that meets our shortfall. So,
all right.
What's the total budget now? Estimate?
was it, I'm trying to think.
46?
Such a short.
Yeah, but then add in
You
the
gotta go over the
contingency,
brook.
so
So-
our shortfall was we were around 78,000. If we're using the, taking the 50,000 off that cost for doing asphalt versus
Right.
the concrete. But
Right.
rather than having to choose that as a hard, fast
Oh, that was
decision
a smart
now,
way to
Right.
do it,
we
yeah.
can
Yeah.
have both of those options in the bid on each
Okay.
one, so,
So we've done this 3 other times.
yes.
So, I think it's in our packet, number 10.
Yeah,
That's it, Amendment 4.
Yeah. It's just, the engineering costs are a huge percentage of the total cost of the
Yeah,
project.
Yeah,
yeah. Well, each thing that has happened, new plans have to
add
be
more costs, yeah.
Right.
developed,
Yep.
more time spent, more meetings
Yep.
are attended, and
So it's in front of us if, want to make a motion to accept Amendment 4?
I'll make a motion to accept Amendment 4.
For additional cost of $3,000.
An additional cost of $3,000
And this is
to
Amendment,
Lamoureaux and Dickinson.
So the idea is this will go out to bid in January with the spring construction.
Okay, and this was dated September 12th, 2018,
Yeah,
the cover letter.
yeah, we just had a meeting.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, any more discussion?
So to be clear, this is not taxpayer money.
This is not very good. Yeah, no, this is still not taxpayer money.
Yeah,
And that's how this started back in 2012. It was
not,
going
not
to
any
be.
town money, right.
Right.
Some
Right.
effort to
it's-
help move it forward by the town.
Right.
And the grant comes through
It's
the town.
90% grant funded. The original estimate was 90% grant funded and then a 10% local match. And that local match was met by the landowners providing. So one of them is doing 80% of that 10%, and the other one's doing 20% of the 10%.
Right. It would be good at some point if they would pick up the ball and move it on their own.
So,
I think Phil's mentioned this before.
Then one of those landowners is now also, in addition to that,
Taking
providing
on.
that shortfall of the 78,000.
Yeah, so
Right.
I think that,
Because they really feel strongly about, I mean, this project will benefit, having NRG employees being able to connect to the village too, and then it gets us closer to that full connection.
right.
Did we ever
At the
find out
sidewalk
whether
project.
this was a condition of their original subdivision or site plan approval?
So I talked to Alex about that a little bit, and you said, so was it actually an original condition of it
Yeah,
when
way
they
back
came?
when I sent you, I think I was supposed to resend this to you, Mitch had asked me to, I forgot, all the various conditions of previous approvals for
Right.
the Rig subdivision and the NRG plan that had to deal with that. My recollection was that the easements to allow for it to happen were required. The actual construction, paying for the construction of it, I don't remember. I'd have to look back at all those conditions.
Yeah. So my question to Mitch, and also, for you to be thinking about, what is the trigger point? So just so we know that any development's having the same sort of criteria, what is the trigger point to have sidewalk being part of their DRB decision?
Well, I think for
that-
the
For
south.
Norris, yeah.
Norris, there is, at so many units,
It
that has to be
It varies
done.
by the project. In the case of some projects where there's nothing beyond them,
Uh-huh.
it's a future-looking trigger, like if something happens to connect, then you're gonna fill in the connection. And we actually have that language for some of the approvals on 116 in front of the Giroux properties where Village Auto Sales are and Automotion and that sort of thing. It depends on the project. There isn't one particular set of conditions. It varies by project.
So will the build out of NRG, will that trigger it, the connection to CVU Road?
Yeah,
there,
absolutely.
yeah,
The
yeah.
next, as part of their master
Right.
plan, they've proposed that sidewalk to continue.
Uh-huh.
If the town wants to wait for them to, there to be water and sewer allocation and wait for a sidewalk to connect to CVU Road, then, and we think that project will happen, we can wait for that to happen. If as a community, we feel like closing that loop is important, then it might be worth applying for
To
another
move
grant
forward,
and
yeah.
having, approaching them about maybe covering the local match but then we have,
Right.
the angst that I think Tom is voicing about the fact there is some town staff time that goes into all
But
this.
it doesn't have to. The town staff time doesn't have
No.
to, and it wasn't going to be on this grant either.
Yeah, but I mean,
I mean,
I
and-
think you gotta be honest with yourself about the fact that if the town is applying for the grant and, it's a project that's important to the town, we're gonna have some oversight. And that's gonna cost some staff resources. You're right, Andrea, we were supposed to have a different project manager that worked at
Right.
NRG. Martha Keenan was gonna be the
Right.
project manager. She was laid off from the company. We lost
So,
the
I mean, so we're
project manager.
rehashing that, but I
Right.
think the question on the table here, or the request, is that the select board understand what are some of the conditions when we're talking about this. I've been saying, I think they have to do that. I'm not, but now you're saying, no, they didn't have to put
I'm
the.
not sure, that's
So
all back
those
to
are,
those
so those are the things we would, I think if we wanna ask, we're gonna be able to ask, and we need to be able to.
Right.
And the difference
Find
was
it out.
what Meadow missed, he had to put that sidewalk in, and we agreed to apply for the grant, but it really is the owner's responsibility. to do that and to manage that project and not
Not put it
Not
on
town
our
staff.
shoulders.
In that case, yes.
Yes. So
Yeah.
that's all, so
Yeah.
we just need to know in each case, what are the requirements? But suffice to say, the owner has, graciously agreed to help move this thing forward. It was sort of stuck.
Yeah.
And now we're moving forward, so that's good.
I just have a question from a knowledge, from more of an edification point of view. Why was there a sidewalk then required to go to the Norris project, but not on the other side of the street up to South Village? It would seem like there's development on both sides of 116 that doesn't, maybe I'm missing something, but that doesn't make sense to me.
I guess that's why I was
Then
asking.
That's,
That's
that's
what was
because,
there.
well, at the time when we were doing, we were doing some sidewalk studies, and which side did it make sense to put a
Right.
sidewalk in? And the constraints of putting the sidewalk on the north side of 116, it
Got that cliff there.
They got the
there's-
cliff there, so there was a whole engineering study prior to even Meadow Mist, or New South Farm. So,
And I think,
and
I don't know,
from
New
a
South
safety
Farms-
standpoint, they said that crossing at Buck Hill was the safer place to cross. So, I mean,
Yeah,
there's.
My memory of the timing was that when New South Farm was constructed, we hadn't, it was not part of the village growth area. Actually, it still
It's
is
not in
not
the
part of
village
the village
growth
growth area. And so the sidewalk requirements are less outside of that area.
And there is a
so,
trail easement.
yeah, the idea was that a grass path that would get folks from that development down to the 116 corridor was sufficient without creating sidewalk on that side of 116 to connect to that. Whereas when Meadow Mist went in, it's part of the village growth area, the sidewalks are non-negotiable, they have to be there. And so that's why. There's also a very large difference in scale, right? Meadow Mist is a 24-unit project, New South Farm was
6.
6, yeah. So that was probably part of it as well, but it's generally in the zoning sort of non-discretionary that if you're in the village growth area, you're gonna have a pedestrian connection. If you're in the RR1 district like New South Farm is, or South Farm, it's not a automatic, it depends on the nature of the project. Plus, that project was connected to the village via trails on the Russell property. So I think there was also discussion about it having connections, but those connections were sort of, less concrete and more.
Rural.
Yeah, more rural as appropriate for that district. Whereas Meadow Mist doesn't have any trail connections, to get to the school, or the only way for people to get to the village is on the road. Yeah, but that's my memory of it. What Andrew's talking about, I don't recall the timing of that
Okay.
particular study.
All right, so what we have on the table here is to this amendment number 4, $3,000. As Tom points out, it's not the town who will pay that, but we are managing the grant, so therefore we have to approve that if we want to move forward.
We have motions.
Not yet.
Yeah, I
there is?
did,
There's a
I made the
motion.
motion.
Is there a second?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, so that motion
Already
is
had it.
approved. Sorry.
No problem.
Number 11, thank you. Alex, are you staying for longer, or are you just,
I wasn't planning on, just.
No, you don't need
giving
to.
myself notes to ask
Okay.
these two about tomorrow, so.
okay. The next item is, we do this, I think, every year.
Yes.
VLCT, annual meeting. We send a delegate who represents Hinesburg and can vote for Hinesburg as they review their, there's a document
Yes,
that has all
policy.
their policies. And so I think you were last year, right? So the expectation that it would be Renee if we approve it, and we have a document to sign for that too.
Yeah. And is that something, if you're nominated, you can do and want to do?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would nominate you for, make a motion to have you be that person for us this year.
Second it.
Okay, and I had some comments, so I did look at the policies, and Most of them seem to make sense. Maybe not all of them, you know. When does this happen?
This happens at the annual meeting, which is held at Town Fair,
And
so
that
October
is
3rd.
October 3rd.
Yeah,
So
so you'll-
Is that
my
first?
suggestion would be, you know, those are the policies. If any of us have any questions or concerns about those, we could bring them up at the next meeting. And, you know, if we choose not to, I don't know, approve the policy that the state should provide more funds for water quality, why we would do that, I don't know, but then, you know, if we could have a discussion about it, and if the select board said, here's one we don't agree with, we could ask
Bring it
you
with
to represent that
Yep.
for us. Because I don't know that if we spent a lot of time and went through that whole thing, we probably wouldn't agree on all of them. But, so, I would invite anybody who wanted to look at it, and if there is something that you feel doesn't necessarily represent the town of Hinesburg the way we want, we could have that discussion
Right.
next time.
Yeah, and there's actually, at the bottom of that form, some
Okay, yeah.
direction
yeah.
as to how to
So-
go about taking care of
Was
that.
there a motion on that?
Yeah, I made the
And a
motion.
second?
Yes.
And
Okay.
Merrily second.
All those in favor of voting Renee as our delegate to represent Hinesburg at the next VLCT annual meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that motion passed. Okay, number 12. Town Administrator Report.
All
We've
right.
got 120 seconds. Go.
Okay, quickly. So we already talked about the SRO position. That was what I was gonna bring up,
Yeah.
but we've covered that. I think you guys all received a VT alert message. It was on Facebook and Front
You know,
Porch
I don't
Forum.
know that I got one.
Well, then you better sign up.
I did sign
Did
up
you?
at one time, but then there were some changes.
There were
made, right?
changes and you had to sign up again
Oh,
for
okay,
those
I'll
changes.
sign up
Yeah.
again. And what was the alert for?
So there's a leaky hydrant valve, and so it's going to impact those
Oh.
of us south of Town Hall, and that'll be taking place on Wednesday.
There was a
They-
posting on.
Yeah,
in-
so I posted on Front Porch
Yeah,
Forum and
okay.
in Facebook and then the VT alert message. They
And
talked with the
reduced
school.
pressure.
The school is out on Wednesday, so they chose that day because of that. Talked to the other businesses and they are gonna start somewhere around 9:30 or after, and it'll just be reduced pressure. And they expect it'll be a pretty quick repair, but just wanted to give the heads up to everyone and so this was more in that effort of trying to give advance notice and work with the different
Great.
businesses and schools to find the best timing on those types of repairs where they have that option. It's
All
not
right.
an emergency. We wanted to talk more about the October 1st. I keep hearing other items we want to move to October 1st, but that we were going to try to
CSWD.
hold that as a public forum. We still haven't heard back from CSWD. We've looking at sending out something that's sort of more of like a invitation type of thing that gives a short summary of the information so that there's not give them on the defensive right off, and so that we're having this public hearing or public forum at the beginning of the October 1st meeting to give folks an opportunity to voice their opinions on what they would like to see in the drop-off center, because that we're trying to get that information for CSWD to help move forward their process so that we can get them back here or get their drop-off center back at the Beecher Hill location. So just want to find out for sure, is October 1st definitely when we're doing it? Do we want to move some of these other agenda items to the October 15th meeting, just to try to keep it limited?
I think so. I mean, I don't imagine it would be more than an hour.
Yeah.
Unless CSWD came in and said we have a half-hour presentation.
The thing we can do is we could put some additional things on the agenda and let those folks know that, perhaps they may be continued on to the next meeting
Okay.
if
Yeah,
that
if we
beginning
run over.
forum runs
Yeah.
over. But if it doesn't, then we can continue on with the regular agenda.
I think that
items,
sounds
so.
good, and we'd probably be upstairs expecting,
Yeah, we can plan for it
Yeah.
upstairs and just let VCAM know that we'll set up there in the event that we do have a large group of people. But the question I wanted ask you guys, because it seemed like you guys were in it, I was just listening to the meeting, but I wasn't sure you had a clear consensus that you wanted this actually mailed out to every resident, or if just the posting on Front Porch Forum, Facebook, and the website was sufficient, or do you feel strongly that you want the mailing
In an article, in
the Citizen?
Yeah, I think, particularly if CSWD, chooses they're going to communicate in other ways and really they choose not to take a big part of this, then it's really, I can't imagine there'll be a lot of citizens coming saying we shouldn't have this. Everyone there's going to come and say, yeah, we want our drop-off center back, and they may have some ideas. It'd be great if it had this. It'd be great if it had that. So, what am I getting at? I guess I don't imagine it's going to be a big controversial, two sides to the story. It primarily would be most everybody a chance for us to say, here's what we've done so far.
Yeah, I do
And
think
we
should
had
have
the
drawings.
resolution. We could have some drawings.
At the forum.
Maybe some pictures of what the site looks like now, which is
Absolutely.
quite impressive.
Yeah.
I have a little
Yeah.
aerial vote.
I was the one who was really in favor of sending a letter out to all residents because Chittenden County Solid Waste District did that
Early on,
early on and gave their point of view. Everybody is not going to come to this meeting, no matter how great it is. People are busy, people are tired. So I still think it would be really good if we sent a mailing out that each person could open and read and get our point of view.
So not so much, it could include the invitation, but
Yeah.
its purpose is not just the invitation. It's to
That's
sort
right.
of say, here's what we're doing.
Exactly. Yeah,
Or
I think
here's what
people
we've
really
done.
need to know.
Here's what we've done.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know if you've talked, so you
guys had.
yeah, you guys have worked on a letter,
Yeah.
I think, which I had a chance to look at, but I happened to come in a couple days ago or whatever and talk to Renee. And, and I thought that has a lot of detail on it. It's not one that I think somebody's going to get in the mail and understand it. I mean, I think, a sort of simple thing of here are the 6 or 8 bullets that we've done, which includes, they've been included in all of our plans. They chose not to stay as a temporary site. We had a resolution in the town that said, let's move forward. They've done, they've helped us with the well. They've done some electrical and whatnot. They're being included in the stormwater, those key things. And now we're ready to have them come back, and it's up to them to make that happen.
I think it might be great to start with those bullet points, but I have to tell you, at town meeting, I'm always impressed how people are really looking at the details. They're reading that little booklet, they're reading every line, and they're really trying to understand it. And it's our townspeople that voted to have the drop-off center and the whole thing come back, and I think that they would be interested in the details that were in that letter. But, not everybody's going to read all those details, but some people are.
I could tell you, I didn't read them all. I just got lost in them, and I know what's going on. So to me, it was more complicated than it needs to be. That's my opinion.
Yeah,
I
well,
guess.
maybe something.
Well, I mean, I
between-
guess I wrote it just so that we would have a record
Yes,
of
yes, and
all the
that's a little
things that
different,
happen.
right?
And when I have had discussions
Yes.
with people,
Yeah.
people do want to know that stuff. So I agree
Yeah.
that we could edit it down to those bullets. But I think if we have the meeting, we should be
need all the
prepared. We
details.
need
Yes,
all
I
that
totally agree,
information.
yeah.
So I really
Absolutely.
wrote
Yeah.
it
So
from
you
the
could have
standpoint
that-
of that at least all of us know exactly what.
Sort of a fact sheet.
Right,
Yeah,
yeah, no, I-
I agree. Yeah.
I agree. I think at the public forum, that's when we want to have all of that information available, have it up on the screen so that we can show folks what happened. I just didn't know for attention purposes if having a more simplified document that has sort of bullet points, what we're doing, why we're having this forum, and a little bit of the history, sort of a timeline of what the general steps that we took from really 2012, but 2014 in earnest is sort of how you worded it once we actually started sitting at a table and meeting about the project and sort of going a brief timeline on that thing, just so people understand that the town has been in support of this all along.
I don't mean any disrespect, but I'm having a hard time grasping if a public forum about this issue is the best use of our time. Because I think there's other avenues that we can get the information out there. I think a letter is one, but an hour public forum, I mean,
Well, I think the question is, are we trying to get information out, or are we trying to solicit information from the public about what they want? Because that seems to be what CSWD is saying, is, well, we don't know what people in Hinesburg
Right.
want.
well,
And so,
But if we come up with a list and say, here's what they want, they're gonna do that themselves. They don't care what we come
I
up
know.
with a list.
yeah,
when
They're
this
not gonna
whole
care about
conversation started, I thought it was about getting our point of view out to the
Right.
residents.
yes,
Right.
yes.
It wasn't about picking their brain.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they were pretty happy with what we had, a place to dump their trash,
Right.
their recycling,
Right.
and whatnot. So
That came
I
out
think
of the
we
meeting
know.
we had from CSW, with CSWD, that's what's holding them.
I think
right
what
now.
we're really trying to do is tell the residents what's going on and
Yeah.
not sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we've done everything. We've bent over backwards.
Yeah.
We've made space. We've spent money for them to come back. That's the information we need to get out. I don't think an hour-long public forum is.
So do you want to just do a letter and not do a forum?
That would be my
Not-
preference. Or links on Facebook, or however we can do it in a concise.
I mean, I think if we wanna get information out, I think a letter is a
Yeah.
good way to do it.
I mean,
And we
they've
can start the
sent the
letter off
letter,
and
they've
saying,
done
yeah.
updates on Front Porch Forum, and we've
Yeah.
said nothing. So that's
Yeah.
where I totally
Right.
agree that
I would agree, you know, a letter, maybe try to get something in the Citizen would be nice, where they could add more detail and, you know, whatever. And we could put it on our agenda, and if anybody wanted to come and talk about the letter,
Right.
they could.
That's a good idea, yeah.
I thought of this public forum kind of as an opportunity for both sides of this conversation to be sitting at the same table, accountable to whoever showed up and whoever had questions for,
Both
Whoever.
sides being CSWD.
and us,
Yeah.
right? You know? So we're talking about getting our story out, they've got their story out, you know? What does the public want from us and Chittenden Solid Waste?
Well, the thing is we don't have anything, you know, I mean, I think.
Well, you know that, I know that, right? But so this is what I'm saying, is like.
That's why we can convey that in a
Exactly.
letter, I
Right.
think,
Exactly.
in a letter.
And that's what this is. And I don't think that we necessarily need to have a special day public forum, but I think it is worthy of an agenda item,
Yeah.
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
And the
Yeah.
letter. And
Oh, and absolutely,
putting
we need
something
to, we
out.
need to
Yeah.
communicate out, you know, we just need to.
Right.
And, you know, we could have if the letter's more of an, well, I'll say overview, we could still have more detail too. You know, have both documents
Well,
available.
but maybe you could just forward that letter to everybody, so all of us have
Yep.
all the details.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
then
that's a good
certainly
idea.
feel free to edit it
Okay.
so that it's more readable.
Are you,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
you're still okay with
Yeah,
doing,
we can
doing
work
that?
on that.
And I said that would help.
Yeah.
And then we'd send it out, you know, make
Yeah.
sure everybody sees it before it goes out.
Are we
Right.
saying a letter that goes out to each and every household, or a letter that could go on Front Porch Forum, and the same letter that can go on Facebook, and the same letter that can go in the Citizen, without actually therefore sending a letter to residents
Right.
through the U.S. Postal Service?
Link a document.
Well,
easiest
not
thing in the
everybody, I mean, there still are people who don't do the internet, you know, who
Well, I
read
understand, but is a newspaper another?
Well,
Platform.
because they sent a letter out, to me, we're respecting the townspeople. We
Okay.
care enough about them that we're gonna send each one of them a letter to explain our point of view about what's happened.
Honestly, this is a good question to ask at town meeting. When we have communication, we want to communicate to you, meaning everybody in town. How do you want us to communicate to you? We have this conversation over and over
Yeah.
again. We
We've
had this
had
with the town
3 or 4
report, we're
meetings.
having this with
Right.
this. I mean, every time we ever, you know, the planning commission has this conversation over and over again, like, how do they want us to communicate with them? It would be a great, this is just a side thought I had, it would be a great answer to have. And maybe the answer is, I want a letter,
different for
I
different
want
people.
Facebook,
Yeah,
I want,
there's probably all
it's like,
three.
that's probably what it
right.
is, but
And in this case, now
we
I'm
just had
sort
this
of,
conversation over and over.
I am sort of leaning toward the letter. Not so much because CSWD sent the letter, that's their prerogative. But, you know, we have a $3 million
Yes,
town garage that looks beautiful.
that's incredible.
And it was, you know, I think a lot of the people's first questions was, what's going to happen to the drop-off center?
Yeah,
We said, oh
that's
no,
right.
don't worry, we're
Yeah.
going to keep it here.
Yeah.
So I think it's a, you know, the timing might be right to sort of say, you know, the town garage is now finished, and we are waiting for them to come back.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And
And
that's-
the space is sitting there, and
And that right there is the premise of the letter.
yeah, right,
That is the crux of the whole thing.
yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great.
And just to be clear, we've worked hard from day one that that's the expectation. These are the steps that have been taken.
Because all this conversation about what services do we want and all that, and what, you know, that's irrelevant. We want the drop-off center back.
Right, right.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's ready to go. There's the
And we know
spot.
it's not gonna have the reuse zone.
Yeah.
That's okay too.
That's
People
okay.
are, yeah. That's what I'm
All
just
right.
fed up with.
Is everybody okay?
So we
Are
are
you
mailing.
Tom, are you okay with?
I'm fine with that.
Okay, all right. All right.
All right.
And so you're not, I'm not gonna say new, Joy, but you're fairly new. And so whenever the town does do a letter to every one, that's usually hand delivered by the assistant.
By
Right,
the chair of the
yes.
select board. Or we do it together.
There we go.
And you get to
So
jog
you
or
know
ride
where
your
everybody lives.
Yeah, you get to
I know
jog.
you're familiar
know
with the Yeoman
yeah.
Road, when we
Yeah.
want you there up on
Thank you.
CB Road.
We'll
Right.
get some good history.
And you get to jog or ride your bike. So,
All right, so next item, I want you to be thinking about your budget priorities. We really need to be getting that on an agenda here, and
Okay.
our agendas keep filling up with other things, and we've got to start prioritizing that. But I want you to be thinking about what your budget priorities this year, also the process last year, what that looked like, what worked, what didn't, and what could we improve this year. I've already tasked the staff, we had the department head meetings, and so they're all now looking at their budget, looking at how 2008, the FY18 closed out, what things, really taking a close look at that so they can start planning for FY20 budget, and what things they need to be thinking 5 years out too, and do we need to start putting money aside for those things. So that's what they are currently looking at. I'd like to start bringing, I think we were gonna do a 2-year cycle of your departments you adopted last year.
Yeah.
So if we're gonna return to those same departments this year, you could start meeting with them, having those conversations, and then formally starting the process, probably be later October.
yeah, and maybe you could sketch a
Yeah, I could put out a timeline.
schedule.
That's
Yeah.
what I kinda wanted you guys to
Yeah.
be thinking about that.
That's a good idea.
Is there something different you wanna do?
Yeah.
Is there, what worked well, what didn't,
How
and,
about you send a memo as to what we actually did?
uh-huh,
Maybe we'll remember.
okay. Yep,
Yeah, that might
Went
be
to a lot of
or-
meetings.
Yeah, an
Right.
email,
Yeah.
just sort of
Yep.
saying, here's what we did last
Yep,
year.
I could
Here's
do
what
that.
our schedule was.
right.
Particularly when you
Yep.
get down to, there's like we get a rough, you kind of, typically, I think last year you went through with the departments, kind of mashed it all together.
Right.
Here's a draft of what
Yep.
we have. Then we had the meetings with the department heads. Then we came back, we made maybe some very slight adjustments.
I
I don't
had
think
each
we
of you
made
meet
much.
with your departments
Yes.
ahead of time on your own,
Yeah.
so you were spending some time with them. Marilee got to do a drive
Oh, that was
along,
really
right
fun.
along
Yeah.
with the police. I mean, just you get a
This
little
year I'll
more
go for a fire
connection.
engine.
Yeah, and you get a little more
Front seat or back seat?
connection, get to know them.
Fancy.
And that was something I was constantly hearing from feedback from some of the department heads. They felt like they didn't really know some of the board members, and the
Yeah.
board members had never stepped foot in their departments. And so just having that connection and building those relationships, I think, is important
And
too.
speaking of your all department head, you had said you were gonna tell us the time so we could attend
Oh.
maybe one of those.
All right, so it's the,
It
let's
just-
see, I don't have my,
October
it's the first Wednesday, or it's
Yeah,
the
you
second,
could-
second
Second Wednesday.
Wednesday,
I think it's
second
the 10th.
Wednesday at 2:00, I believe.
Let me just look.
And they last about an hour and a half?
Yeah, I mean, an hour. Yeah, the first one's lasted longer, so we kind of go through sort of
think
a
October
regular,
10th.
Okay, you have a
regular
standard
agenda, yeah, where they
good.
sort of share what's going on in each of their departments. We have Alex from Planning and Zoning bring back what's the proposed development, so if there's any coordination that needs to happen with highway, utilities and everything, so they're seeing what the development is, so they can provide feedback.
And that would be good, I think, just to,
And we look at our budget status report, you know, just to see where we're at in the fiscal year and what things, talk about things, what, if there's something that's up a little high or low, or
or what's coming in the
what's
next
coming
month.
next, yeah.
yeah.
So just trying to keep a close look on the budget.
All right.
And then some additional items that we have.
Yeah.
But those are the
Good.
standard ones. And that's it.
All right. Select board forum?
Go ahead.
Well, I just want to say I'm not going to be able to come on October 1st, and I'm not going to be in a place that I can have internet connection, so
Okay,
I'm just going to have to be absent from that meeting.
all right. Mary Lee will get all the tasks.
Should be nominated for everything.
It was a really fun day on Saturday for the Public Safety Day
Oh,
down
yeah.
at the fire station.
I wasn't able to go.
Lots of great conversations, meeting folks. Of course, the kids love the trucks. The younger kids love climbing on the trucks. Really great event. It's a really great event, and I'm really happy that they take the time to do that event because it really lets folks interact one-on-one and in a very conversational and a very festive almost atmosphere instead of encountering one of these folks in a stressful emergency situation. And it was great weather and great event. So I thank them for putting that on.
All right, anybody else? Item 14, review the minutes from 9/3.
I'll make a motion to accept them as amended, if there is any.
Second.
I had a change possible in the discussion of the student resource or school resource.
Yeah.
Is it
In
student
the
or
very
school
beginning?
resource?
School resource officer.
Yeah. And the second paragraph, Andrea said the goal is not to impact. I would word that as the goal is to not impact Hinesburg's budget.
Just to not impact.
Yeah.
It's a whole different sentence.
Yeah, it reads a little more,
Yeah, no, and
Fluidly.
that's I think more what you were
I
saying.
actually was gonna change that, and I listened to the tape, and that was.
oh, really? That's what I said?
That's the way you said it, and I'm
Okay.
like, maybe that's the way she wanted it to sound.
Good for you doing your homework.
Really, I'm not as very articulate when I speak. Then I did have some changes to the ERP, and I wrote it down, but basically Andrea explained the Clean Water Initiative Program Ecosystem Restoration Grant Program that has funded the design and engineering for the stormwater system at the highway garage and the preliminary design for floodplain restoration. The ERP grant application for this work has been prepared by Lewis Creek Association on behalf of the town. A letter of support and commitment to operations and maintenance is required from Hinesburg as the landowner. The town match is calculated at $60,750, which was the estimated cost for demolition of the existing garage and associated buildings.
So that's what you had said?
I mean, I think that's what I said. I mean, it's a little confusing because it says Lewis Creek has written the grant application as landowner. Well,
Okay.
no, the town's the landowner. But the grant application is being prepared by LCA on behalf of the town. The town has to say that they support it.
You emailed me
Yes.
that
Okay,
yesterday.
I
so
have it
that
written
sounds
out,
good, if
yeah.
everyone's in agreement.
Yeah.
Yep, that makes sense. Anybody else have anything? I had one item, just a note that, the second page, consider approving FY '18 reserve funds. And there, it does say on the second section there, action item for the board is to research the minutes and get the wording of that motion moving the funds. So we wanted to say, you know, what did we vote and what would those funds be? How should those funds be used? Because it's a significant amount of money.
Yep,
We
you
did.
have it.
I've spent a lot of time listening to that meeting, and I will spend
Very
some
long
more time. This is a task, and my goal is to get back to you by October 1st.
Oh, okay.
As to what,
We said.
So the motion
Yes.
wasn't clear, but
I
the
know, I was
motion
there.
matched what was said as the motion. But I think everybody understood what the intent was that was in that room. I think probably something was said earlier in the conversation, we just haven't gotten to that point of the meeting. So
I
it was a
remember
very
it
long.
was a very confusing time, so I don't
Yeah.
doubt that it's a little unclear. And,
I certainly have the stuff that I wrote out, but
Uh-huh.
we probably have to go by what you hear at the meeting.
well, I have to do it in chunks again, because I
Okay.
thought I got to the point, and then I didn't. It
was very
read
long.
exactly as
As
written,
written.
but it
Okay.
was as vague as it was written.
Right, right.
so maybe if we
So,
get
right.
what we think is the capture, if we capture, you know, as best as we can, what was said and what the motion was, then we can take a look at it and decide what to do with it. You know, I
Right.
don't know if we, you know, have to get the Conservation Commission, you know, have a discussion and sort of say, you know, what is its meaning? Let's get some agreement. The select board, I think, would have to agree. And then, you know, so what do we plan to do with it?
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't think, if we wanted to change our mind, I think we could.
Yeah,
But we want to do it in an open
Yeah,
session
yeah.
and have some discussion about what the options are.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, the Conservation Commission fund is separate from this.
Yes, right,
Okay.
right,
Yeah.
yep. So that wasn't a change, that was just me reading that. Any other comments? Nope. So all those.
Well,
in-
we should, I hope everybody's been up to the highway garage and seen it? Yeah. They're
Looks
all
quite
moved in?
impressive.
They're all moved
It's
in?
really, I know, it's nice to, you know, like,
Incredibly impressive.
yeah, it's very
And
impressive.
the old garage is torn down and
Oh, I thought that was the way, oh, okay, so, yeah, it looked exactly the same there, just in a big pile. No, it's just, yeah, it wasn't that far off.
right.
I do have pictures of it all.
Yeah. Huh,
Yeah, I mean, there's many
And it-
videos of the
Yeah.
garage
Want
going
that.
down
I
and,
think it's great.
yeah.
It looks pretty impressive.
So do you think that there could be an article in the Citizen about that? I know Mike wasn't excited about that, but it's a huge deal for the
Right.
town.
Yeah, I mean, there'll be an open house
Yeah,
later on and
yeah.
everything, so we'll make a, you know, a big deal of that too. And, but yeah, I mean, that could be, maybe there could be a series of a couple of articles that the Citizen writes about not only, you know, what we're talking about with the drop-off center, returning the steps that led up
Yeah.
to that.
Yes.
And then the celebration of the garage when we have that open
And
house.
there's, must be a landscaping plan associated with it a little bit.
Well, that's what the floodplain
Oh,
restoration
okay,
Yes,
is.
that's
yeah,
that-
yeah, gotcha,
Yep,
yeah.
that grant that you guys just.
And there was some planting that's supposed to happen associated with the driveway coming up that was
Part of the DRB.
on the DRB, but a lot
Yeah.
of it associated with the drop-off center.
Yes, right. All right, so we have our, are we all set to, and we have a motion, we have a second, I think?
Yeah.
All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, so that motion passed. Can I get a motion to approve the warrants?
I'll make that for you.
All right, and a second?
Second it?
So I looked at them and I'm like, oh, look, I already signed them. But now it's Monday,
Back to
so
Monday,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, back to Monday. So all those in favor of approving the warrants, say aye.
Aye.
Aye? So that motion passed. We have no reason to go into executive session.
Ask you that.
I'll make a motion to
But we
adjourn.
do, in lieu of going into executive session, we're gonna have to sign about 6 documents
Oh,
before
away.
we leave.
Yep.
But we can adjourn, I think, before that, if there's a motion.
I will make a motion to adjourn, but I want to add congratulations to Phil for keeping us on track. I never thought that we would end before 11 tonight when I looked at all the
Look at
things
that,
we were
we're
going
15 minutes, yeah. Well, we still have that last item to adjourn. We need a second.
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
aye.
Aye. Thank you.